subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Synopsis. Before the Kuruta tribe was exterminated, Rocky became a member of the Kuruta tribe and faced the crisis of extinction as soon as he arrived. The brigade will soon come to the door to open their hearts and lungs. In order not to be made into a specimen, they have to fight. Open the personal information panel to modify the panel information freely. What are you afraid of? If the talent is not good, directly modify the top talent, and then automatically awakens. Easily master the 4 elements and start the lightning speed of progress. If the physique is not good, directly modify the top physique, which is more terrible than the Chimera Ant, comparable to the life energy of the world tree, and can resist the rose of the poor, nuclear bomb. If the bloodline ability is not good, directly modify the top bloodline ability. The real power of the red eyes is not that simple. Rocky, the Kuruta tribe, cannot be destroyed, and it must go to the world. The messenger of the devil? No, the Kuruta tribe is the messenger of God. Chapter 1. Starting from the Kuruta tribe under the clear sky in a very dense forest. On the path in the forest, a man who looked very handsome, with a medium-length beard and messy hair that had not been taken care of for a long time. Wearing loose blue and white clothes and a hooded cloak, this kind of clothes is very convenient for labor or fighting. The uncle carried a bamboo basket with some fruits, mushrooms, and other things picked in the forest. Behind him followed a little kid. The clothes they wore were the same style, both hooded cloaks, but the little kid's clothes were mainly orange. Little Rocky, walk faster, don't leave me too far, otherwise you will get lost. Hearing this, Rocky raised his head, threw away the small branch in his hand, and quickened his pace. It seemed that he wanted to catch up with the uncle in front faster. Soon they came to a flat ground where the trees were not so dense. Rocky glanced at the stone beside him, sat down directly, and supported his hands on his knees as he watched the uncle start to wash the things he had just picked by the river. "Uncle, can't you teach me how to draw that barrier trap?" The uncle who was washing fruits turned around and looked at Rocky. "You're really a weird kid. You don't want to play, but want to learn this kind of thing all day long. I have said it many times. This matter has to wait until you are an adult. The tribe leader will personally select tribe members to teach you. It is not up to me." He threw a strange green fruit at Rocky. It tasted like a mixture of apples and peaches. "Teach me. I promise not to tell anyone." "Humph. Who believes the promise of kid?" The uncle stood up and put the basket with water on his back. "You are really a freak of our Kuruta tribe." "Little Rocky, Kuruta tribe." Rocky was helpless. It was because he became a member of the Kuruta tribe that he was so eager to learn the barrier. It is called the barrier, but it is actually none. Kuruta tribe is a minority tribe in Hunter x Hunter. When their emotions fluctuate strongly, their eyes will turn red. It is known as one of the 7 most beautiful women in the world, and is called the Crimson Eye. Because of this eye, the Kuruta tribe has to hide their identities and live in the mountains. Now Rocky is very anxious. Becoming a member of the Kuruta tribe means that Phantom Troop will come to exterminate the tribe at any time. I don't want to die. However, there is no way to escape now. The Kuruta tribe can use the mind, and use the mind to carve out many barrier traps near their residence. These barriers are linked together, and they actually have a similar effect to the magic circle, which made Rocky successfully lost when he tried to escape for the first time. In the end, he was found by the tribe leader. This made Rocky understand that the Kuruta tribe can read. I thought they couldn't. But Rocky couldn't say that he wanted to learn the mind, because there were only more than 100 people in the entire Kuruta tribe. It was impossible for an 8-year-old kid like me to know such a thing as reading. So these days, Rocky has been pestering his uncle, the younger brother of his dead father, to teach him the barrier-style mind. But what kind of bullshit rule does the Kuruta tribe have? They can only learn after they are 18 years old. And the prerequisite for learning is to be able to control emotions. That's right. If a tribe member who can't control his emotions controls the mind, once it goes berserk, the consequences will be disastrous. But the problem is that Rocky doesn't have that much time to wait until he is 18 years old. Who knows when Phantom Troop will appear? Now Rocky hasn't found Kurapika yet. I don't know if Kurapika hasn't been born yet, or what. In short, Rocky can't rest assured. Even if she is not born, what if Kurapika is born next year? Calculating the time, the tribe will be exterminated when Kurapika is 12 years old, and he will be 20 years old by then. 20 years old. Even if you learn none at the age of 18, you need to spend another 2 years to improve your strength. If you want to be able to protect yourself against the brigade, the time is very tight. Even Rocky doesn't know how talented he is in practicing none. What if it's very bad? Then the early bird must fly first. Uncle, just teach me. Anyway, no one knows. There are only you and me here. If you don't tell me and I don't tell you, no one can know. The uncle glanced at Rocky and said, "Don't dream. I won't risk violating the clan rules and being expelled from the Kuruta tribe to teach you." Huh? Expelled from the Kuruta tribe. Rocky's eyes lit up slightly. This seems to be a good idea. Satsuki. The clan leader said that the barrier in the west seems to have been hit by wild beasts and has been damaged. I want you to take a look and repair it. Suddenly, another Kuruta tribe member appeared, said something to Rocky's uncle, and then disappeared. Satsuki looked back at Rocky and said, "Boy, it's impossible to teach you. At most, I can let you take a look, but there is a condition. After you have seen it, you can't bother me all the time." Okay. Rocky agreed without thinking. Although he might not be able to see anything, he had to try it. Soon, under Satsuki's leadership, they arrived at a place in the western forest. Rocky looked around along the way, but couldn't see anything at all. However, Satsuki stopped in front of a tree. "Well, it is indeed a little damaged, but it can be repaired soon." Satsuki glanced at Rocky and said, "Okay, little Rocky, watch me start to repair it. After you have seen it, you can't bother me all day long." Rocky nodded. Seeing this, Satsuki smiled. How could a little kid turn the world upside down? This kind of thing is not something that ordinary people can see. There is no problem in performing the mind in front of Rocky, because he can't see anything at all. And the fact is indeed so. But Rocky was not completely unprepared. Under normal circumstances, he could not see it, but he had to try an abnormal situation. As a member of the Kuruta tribe, the abnormal situation was of course the state of the fire eyes being open. Although he was only 8 years old, his soul was more than 8 years old. The conditions for opening the fire eyes were also very simple, with strong fluctuations in emotions, especially when he was angry. Rocky was now able to barely rely on his own emotions to reach the conditions for opening the fire eyes. But it was only 3 or 2 seconds at most, because it was much more difficult than imagined to maintain the emotion of anger. He took a deep breath. The next second, Rocky's eyes began to emit red light. Sweat kept falling from his forehead. Satsuki, who was busy repairing the barrier, did not notice Rocky's changes at all. At this moment, Rocky did see some differences in his eyes. The light seemed to have changed to a certain extent in Satsuki's hands, as if the other party's fingers were astigmatism. Added in personal panel. Added successfully. Host, Rocky race, human. Kuruta, none talent. Intermediate, bloodline ability. Low, chapter 2. One word makes a world of difference personal panel. Rocky looked at the translucent interface in front of him. At this time, Galyu looked back at Rocky and said, "What's wrong with you?" He seemed to have noticed that Rocky's expression was a little strange. And Rocky was stunned for a moment and heard Gaoyu's voice. He looked at Gaoyu through the interface and said, "Nothing, nothing. Boy, you can't see anything. Don't be disappointed. When you're 18 years old and past the trial of the clan leader, you will be able to learn it." After that, Gaoyu continued to concentrate on repairing the barrier. And at this time, Rocky breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that only he can see this interface. Otherwise, such a big thing is blocking the front. Unless you are blind, you can't see it. But what's the use of this thing? It's useless to show yourself your current panel data. Rocky looked around carefully, but there was nothing except some of his own information. Nothing. Don't give me a task or something. Newbie rewards are also good. Rocky was confused. What's the use of this? If I can only look at my information, it would be better not to have it. He stared at the panel again with wide eyes, and after a closer look, he found a very small button behind each of his information. If you don't look closely, you can't see it. You can imagine how small it is. The background color is the same as the panel, and there is no color difference. If I don't look carefully, I might have overlooked it. And this small button or icon has a pencil-like pattern with a horizontal line below. Although there is no text description for this pattern, anyone who can use a computer can more or less guess it. What does this mean? Can I modify my information? Rocky tried to raise his hand to click it, but as soon as his hand moved, a flashing vertical line appeared on his information bar. Bloodline ability, low level. The flashing vertical line made Rocky slightly stunned. What does this mean? Does it mean that it can be deleted? If it can really be deleted, then it means that it can be edited and changed freely. Then after changing the information, can I become the person I changed it to? Thinking of this, Rocky quickly moved his eyes upwards. He came to the Nun talent column. Let's not talk about bloodline ability or anything like that. This world is the world of Hunter x Hunter, and Nun is the most important thing. And how can his talent in Nun be only intermediate? After thinking about it, Rocky wanted to delete the text in the Nun talent information column. Sure enough, when a vertical line appeared on the Nun talent information column, Rocky just silently thought about deleting it. Nun talent. Looking at the blank information column, Rocky couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Now he has begun to get excited. Since it was intermediate before, how should he modify it now? Top, can it work? Along with Rocky's thoughts, new text quickly appeared in the information column. Nun talent. Top, really? Rocky glanced at the modification icon just now and thought about touching it again. A new dialog box popped up the next second. Host has modified the information panel. Do you confirm? Of course he confirmed. Modification completed. Reevaluating and improving panel information. Obtaining new modification permissions. Countdown to obtain modification permissions. 29 days 23 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. The next modification will take a month? Okay, it doesn't matter. This time is not too long, and there is no problem. The problem is my panel information now. Host, Rocky, race, human. Kuruta, Nun talent, top. Bloodline ability, low. The panel information has indeed changed. My modification just now was really successful, but the change in the panel information, will it affect me? Rocky thought about feeling it, and the panel disappeared naturally. Carefully feel your body. It seems there's no difference. Rocky raised his head and looked in the direction of the moon. At this moment, the state of the red eyes has been lifted. But Rocky began to adjust his mood again and tried to open the red eyes again. Continuously opening the red eyes is not a big problem. If it was before, Rocky would never try it because it was impossible after trying it. It is impossible to open it continuously. The interval time must be at least 6 hours. However, this time Rocky did not feel the slightest tiredness, as if the physical strength consumed by opening the red eyes just now was restored. He opened the fire eyes again, but this time Rocky didn't notice the hand of the moon, but looked at his own hand. There seemed to be a layer of white mist on his body, although it was not too strong, but it was clearly visible. A few seconds passed quickly, and when Rocky was still surprised, the fire eyes closed again. Even if it was closed this time, Rocky could still see some faint white smoke like dry ice coming out of his body. Although not much, but it was clearly visible. Is this life energy? Looking at the white smoke coming out, Rocky instinctively tried to control the smoke, flowing according to his own wishes. The flow of thoughts accelerated instantly, and the original natural flow began to become faster. Under Rocky's subconscious control, the thoughts that would have spread little by little, that is life energy. Although the speed of this diffusion is very slow, compared with active control, the speed of this diffused life energy loss is already very fast. The moon on this side also moved quickly and fixed the barrier. After all, it was only a little damaged and not much. But when he turned his head to look at Rocky, he suddenly felt something was wrong. Rocky seemed a little different. His aura was full. Little Rocky. Suddenly, Galyu was stunned. A familiar feeling made him stunned. This feeling of full aura, isn't it? Only Nun can have. Condensation. Galyu gathered the aura in his eyes, looked at Rocky, and the next second his mouth opened wide, staring at Rocky blankly. Is this controlling the aura? The flow of aura on Rocky's body was no longer passive and natural, but actively flowing around Rocky, and there was almost no aura that naturally dissipated. Entanglement? This is entanglement, right? But why? Why did Rocky suddenly control the mind and directly mastered the trick of entanglement? Is it really because he learned it by watching me use the mind? No way. But the previous Rocky definitely couldn't read. There is no doubt about that. But now this. Galyu felt that his brain was not enough. If he really learned to use none just by watching himself use none, and he was so talented that he could master the entanglement just by instinct, then it means this kid is a genius of none, maybe even scarier than a genius. After all, no one actively opened aura nodes for Rocky. He opened it automatically by instinct. Thinking of this, Taiwe felt that Rocky's talent was even scarier. Chapter 3. This is the age of genocide. Chief. Chief. Bang. The door of the Kuruta chief's house was kicked open. The panting Galyu rushed in from outside, holding Rocky. At this moment, Rocky was also looking at everything in the house. In the middle of the house, there was a fat potato, a short but fat old man. But the other party's eyes were sharp, and there were scars on his face. It seemed that he had experienced many thrilling battles. There was a powerful mind wrapped around his body. The moment Rocky was carried into the house by Galyu, the other party's eyes had already fallen on Rocky, and he looked at Rocky carefully. When he saw the entanglement on Rocky, his sharp eyes also revealed a bit of surprise. Chief, Rocky, this kid. Galyu was so excited that he couldn't speak. Just kidding. A kid who awakened his mind at the age of 8. This kind of genius is definitely rare in the whole world. The chief raised his hand to signal Galyu that there was no need to say anything. I know, the old man with a big Viking beard said, looking at Rocky, who was put down, and smiled amiably. Little Rocky, you are amazing. You can actually control ki. At this moment, Rocky looked at the old man in front of him, who looked fierce and had a scary scar on his face, showing such a kind smile, and felt a strong sense of disobedience. Such an expression really makes people hard to get close to, but Rocky still smiled. Ki. I know it. It seems to be quite simple to control it. Quite simple? Suki rolled his eyes helplessly. He had studied for 5 years before he finally risked his life to open the aura nodes, and then he learned to read. The reading that he learned after a life-and-death experience became quite simple in the mouth of an 8-year-old kid. The world of geniuses is really annoying. The clan leader nodded. How did you learn it? Clan leader, let me tell you. As if afraid that someone would take the credit, Yayu started to tell Rocky about how he took Rocky to see him repair the barrier. After listening to the story, the clan leader stroked his beard and looked at Rocky with a puzzled look. It is impossible to awaken the mind just by looking at it. If the talent is really that terrifying, then the mind should have awakened on its own a long time ago, instead of awakening after just looking at it. After all, those guys will inevitably use the mind in the clan sometimes. But why did it happen today? Being stared at by the clan leader made Rocky a little scared, and he didn't know if the other party saw something. Did he realize that his eyes were not like those of a child? The clan leader did feel this. The child's eyes were clear and smart, while Rocky's eyes were deep and bright, which meant that this child's mind was probably not simple. This kind of eyes is not what an 8-year-old child should have. Oh, by the way, clan leader, Rocky can actually open the flaming red eyes, and he opened it on his own initiative. Although it was only for a moment, I saw his eyes flicker and turn red. At this age, he can control his emotions freely. Rocky is worthy of being my nephew. Ha ha ha, smiled. When the clan leader heard that the flaming red eyes were opened, he nodded. If it was the opening of the flaming red eyes that caused the sudden awakening of the mind, then it is not impossible. Okay, go back, Galyu, little Rocky. Stay here. Live with me. His parents died early. You have taken care of him all these years. Now that he has awakened his mind, he needs someone to teach him carefully. Let me guide him. Galyu smiled and said, I brought him here because I want you to teach him. He has awakened his mind at this age. Rocky is probably the first one in the entire Kuruta tribe to awaken his mind. The tribe leader nodded. It is true that he awakened his mind at this age, and it was not due to external factors. He was the first person in the history of the Kuruta tribe to awaken his mind on his own. It is great for Rocky to stay with the tribe leader. If you want to understand the current situation of the Kuruta tribe, it is undoubtedly best to be with the tribe leader. Although there are only more than 100 people in the Kuruta tribe, they are not all crowded in one place, but scattered throughout the forest. If everyone lives together, there will be too many traces of living, and it is easy to be discovered even with barrier-like protection. So Rocky has no way to investigate how old Kurapika is now. Now the opportunity has come. Others don't know, but there's no reason why the chief doesn't know. The chief even knows the names of all the tribe members 100%. Little Rocky, you have to be obedient and don't make trouble when you live here with the chief. Also, you have learned to control your ki now. You have to learn it well from the chief and make it stronger slowly. Don't you want to learn the barrier style? As long as your ki is strong enough, the chief can teach you. Gayu was telling Rocky. After telling him about some trivial things, although Gayu was still very happy, he seemed reluctant to leave Rocky. It was as if he was worried that Rocky was shy and didn't want to stay here. Wait until Gayu left. The chief looked at Rocky. Little Rocky, are you hungry? Do you want to eat something? After eating, I'll do the water seeing style for you to see what power your ki has. Water seeing style. Yeah, indeed. Rocky himself was a little curious. What kind of nun he was? Rocky hopes to be a nun of the trait system or conjurer. If he is neither of these two, then it would be best to be an enhancer. Trait system ability flower. Conjurer has strong ability, and its basic attack and defense level is not low. Enhancer is the one with the least shortcomings among the balance systems. In addition, in Rocky's opinion, other systems need to develop their abilities very well to reduce their defects, which is far less good than these three systems. Let's go. The chief took Rocky's hand and led Rocky to the inner room. At this time, Rocky also reacted, and suddenly his eyes flashed. Grandpa Chief, I want to ask, is there a person named Kurapika among the tribe? Hearing this, the chief nodded and said yes. Why do you suddenly ask Kurapika? Nothing. I met him in the forest before, and we played together for a long time. Later, I forgot to ask him where he lived. I thought about looking for him next time. This answer is normal for Rocky at this age. The chief nodded. Well, I'll tell you where he lives later. But since you have awakened your mind, you have to practice hard for a long time. Mind plus fiery red eyes. These two things are quite dangerous. If Rocky can't control his fiery red eyes and ki, then the chief will not let Rocky go easily. After all, once Rocky loses control, many people in the tribe will die, especially a gifted kid like Rocky. Not only can Rocky not be allowed to lose control, but Rocky must also be trained well. Rocky is now starting to panic, because the chief's answer just now made Rocky a little worried. Okay, Chief Grandpa, by the way, who is older, Kurapika or me? The chief casually said. He is a few years older than you. Kurapika is 12 years old this year, and you're only 8 years old? Can't you tell that Kurapika is older than you? He is taller than you. Rocky's hand suddenly tightened. 12 years old. Hey. No way. This is the age of extermination of the tribe. Chapter 4. The speed of cultivation of top talents. Some white crystals appeared in the water. So you are a manipulator. The clan leader nodded, not too concerned about the result. He turned around and began to explain to Rocky the so-called nun system. Nien. It is divided into 6 systems. Enhancer, conjurer, manipulator, special system, emitter, transmuter. There are 6 categories, and each person can only be a special user in one of them. However, in addition to their main system, other systems can also be cultivated, but they cannot fully exert their abilities. The maximum power exerted decreases by 20% with each system. For example, a conjurer can only exert 80% of the power of an enhancer and manipulator. The farther the distance, the more difficult it is to cultivate the corresponding system. Among them, the special system cannot be cultivated. Either they are born with special system, or, because of some changes in the future, the system has changed, becoming a nun of special system. Among them, the most likely to change into a nun of special system are the nun of manipulator and emitter. The two systems are also the closest to the trait system. Okay, kid, do you understand what I told you? Hearing the question from the clan leader, Rocky nodded. But at this moment, Rocky was quite disappointed. Manipulator? Why do you have to be a manipulator? Manipulators usually don't fight by themselves, but through mind beasts or materialized items, applying abilities to this item to gain powerful combat power. And the general fighting style is more long-range, because the attack and defense capabilities of their own mind are generally weaker. So they have to try to choose long-range combat to play the advantages of their own manipulator. Even if it's not a trait system, it's good to be a conjurer. Sighed silently. At this moment, the clan leader thought Rocky was tired. After all, most children of this age are playful. It's already amazing to be able to do it quietly for so long and complete the Mizumi Shiki. Mizumi Shiki did see that Rocky's talent was amazing. It is not so easy to complete the water viewing style. If the mind does not reach a certain level, the water viewing style will react, but this reaction is too weak to distinguish what type of nun it is. And Rocky has just awakened his mind. Half an hour ago, his mind was only very weak, just slightly stronger than that of an average adult. But half an hour later, Rocky has been releasing his mind, and the strength of his mind is constantly increasing. It has completely reached the requirements of the water viewing style. But now there are still few white crystals in the cup, as small as gravel. Little Rocky, don't think about playing for the next period of time. Continue the practice just now. If you can fill the entire cup with the white crystals just now, and complete in one go, you can go out to play. Go out to play? Rocky doesn't want to go out to play now, but wants to run away. There is no way. Kurapika is already 12 years old. Who knows when the Kuruta tribe will be exterminated? Rocky doesn't want to stay here to be buried with him. Although he had been here for a while, it was only a while, and Rocky had not developed any feelings with these Kuruta people. Even Gaoyu did not have much feelings for Rocky. His own life was the most important. Can't the clan leader go out? I have been practicing for a long time. Is half an hour considered a long time? It should be considered. The clan leader smiled and said, "Don't think about it, little Rocky. If you don't complete what I said just now, don't even think about going out to play. You can't even leave this room." Gaoyu said you want to learn the barrier style, and I also left the barrier style in this room. You can't leave without my energy. Just stay in your room and take a nap if you're tired. I'll let you go out and play for a day after you finish your training. Rocky's mouth twitched slightly. Is this considered child abuse? He was only 8 years old. Such crazy exploitation. It's not that the clan leader had any idea of abusing and exploiting Rocky. He just wanted to see how terrifying Rocky's talent was. From a beginner to completing the Mizumi style in half an hour. He really wanted to know how long it would take Rocky to reach the level of perfect Mizumi style if Rocky gave his all. Being able to perform the perfect Mizumi style basically means that you are a qualified nun. It can also be considered as a formal entry. And this level is equivalent to the level of Gon and Killua learning to read and fighting against Nun for the first time in the Sky Arena. After the clan leader arranged a room for Rocky, he left and reminded Rocky not to be lazy. Rocky was left alone in the room, looking at the cup of water on the table. He really didn't let me go out. Rocky didn't care about cultivation, but wanted to change a place to cultivate. As long as he wasn't in the Kuruta tribe, Rocky felt safe anywhere. There's no other way. I can only improve my strength as soon as possible. At least I can run faster when I escape. Rocky thought for a while. With the strength of the mind of Gaoyu and others, the barrier style they released is not too strong. If I improve my strength as soon as possible and break through the barrier style violently, I can escape from the Kuruta tribe. He took a look at his information panel. Nun talent. Top. With a top talent, I think my improvement speed should not be too slow. Rocky sat cross-legged and placed his hands next to the water cup filled with water. The mind was activated again. This time, the energy was obviously stronger than before, and after half an hour of crazy release, Rocky's energy recovered very quickly. The so-called nun talent does not simply refer to Rocky's talent for controlling mind, but is all-round. Mind is life energy, and Rocky's talent is top level. And in fact, Rocky's body has also changed. His physical fitness is completely equal to Gon. and he even has more potential than gone. Outside the window, the clan leader squinted his eyes and looked at Rocky in the house. He still has some perseverance. For a kid of this age, it's already very good that he is willing to practice hard and not play around. I just don't know how terrifying Rocky's talent is. And the answer will soon be known. In 3 days, Rocky watched the cup in his hand being pierced by the surging white crystals because of the release of ki. The cup exploded directly. Water spilled everywhere. What remained in front of Rocky was a piece of white crystal. Looking at the crystal on the table, Rocky was stunned. Is this the embodiment of his own mind? In just 3 days, Rocky's mind has increased by more than 10 times. During these 3 days, Rocky had a normal schedule and thought that practice would be a boring thing anyway. But Rocky found that it was not the case at all. He could feel the rapid growth of his mind every moment. It was almost visible to the naked eye. This feeling of getting stronger makes people unable to stop. Usually, it feels boring because you can't see the progress, but if you can see and feel it, then whether it is learning or practicing, it will not be boring. Have fun reading every day during the National Day. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Recharge now. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 5 Manipulator training the sound of the broken cup made the chief outside the house walk into the house quickly and come to Rocky's door. He pushed the door open. What's wrong with you? I heard sound just now. Did you break any sound? The chief asked, but when he came behind Rocky and saw the broken cup on the table, plus the flower-shaped white transparent crystals that looked like thorns entangled together, the bearded chief's mouth opened wide instantly, staring at the water spilled on the table in amazement. Your water-seeing style has reached this point? Rocky nodded. It was almost done yesterday, but I didn't expect to break the cup. Hearing this, the chief closed his mouth. 3 days. It's only been 3 days. From a few crystals at the beginning to now, directly forming such a large crystal, this progress speed is too evil. How long did it take you? It's not unacceptable to form such a huge crystal and break the cup. It won't take long. Less than a minute, Rocky said calmly. The chief seemed to choke up when he heard this answer. If Rocky said that he spent a lot of time to achieve this step, then the chief felt that he could still accept it. After all, if he persisted a little and maintained the intensity of the water viewing style, that is, the intensity of the release of ki, then if there was enough time, it would not be a big deal. But less than a minute to achieve this point, this was beyond his understanding. After calming down, the chief took out a water cup again, which was naturally filled with water, and placed it in front of Rocky. Try it in front of me. Rocky nodded. He started to perform the water viewing style again. When Rocky released his ki, the chief's heart suddenly shrank. There was a look of surprise in his eyes. What a powerful ki. It's only been 3 days, and it has increased so much. Rocky's current ki strength seems to have reached the level that ordinary nin practitioners can reach in about a year. Is this genius? It is totally impossible to guess with common sense. Bang! The cup shattered, and the crystallized this time was even bigger. Seeing this, the clan leader sighed helplessly. This is the gap between people. It took me more than half a year to practice the Mizumi style to reach this level. And this kid in front of me, 3 days. I feel that my talent, which was originally worthy of pride, is not worth mentioning. Compared with Rocky, it is garbage. Well, not bad. You completed my order in 3 days. You are indeed talented in mind. Good talent. Rocky frowned. Isn't he a top talent? Didn't the modification succeed? This can only be considered good? Maybe I am too lazy. I didn't use all my time to practice, so my talent has not been fully utilized? Rocky thought so. Okay, you can go out and play next. I will teach you new practice tomorrow. Hearing this, Rocky thought about it. Play. No. I don't have time to play now. At the same time, due to his own talent, Rocky also had new ideas. It has only been 3 days, and it has become like this. What will it be like if he practices for a period of time? Is there a chance to become stronger before the extinction of the tribe, so as to save the Kuruta tribe? If possible, of course, the Kuruta tribe must be saved, but if it is impossible, Rocky will choose to save himself first. Cultivating and becoming stronger. The feeling of being able to feel yourself getting stronger all the time is really enjoyable. Grandpa, by the way, Kurapika is still in the tribe. The tribe leader nodded and said, "Of course, if the people of the Kuruta tribe are not in the tribe, they are somewhere else." That's good. Although he doesn't know much about the specific extinction of the Kuruta tribe, Rocky also remembers that the destruction of the Kuruta tribe occurred after Kurapika left. Rocky doesn't remember why he left, but even if he only remembers this, it is enough. As long as Kurapika is still in the Kuruta tribe, he is safe. If Kurapika left the Kuruta tribe at that time, it would mean that the extinction of the tribe was coming. It seems that there should be some time now, but it is not clear how long it is. It doesn't matter that I live with the tribe leader now. If Kurapika wants to leave the Kuruta tribe, she must get the tribe leader's consent. So there is no need to worry that Kurapika will leave the Kuruta tribe quietly. Tribe leader, I don't want to go out to play. I want to practice. You come and continue to teach me to practice. The tribe leader was confused when he heard this. Didn't you ask Kurapika just now? Don't you want to go to Kurapika to play? Rocky shook his head. No, practice first. Practice is too interesting. This kid is indeed strange, but since Rocky took the initiative to ask, the tribe leader is also very happy. He wants to try what kind of strong man Rocky will become if he trains him seriously. Okay, since you have completed the basic practice, then try the advanced practice. You are a nun of manipulator, so come to practice the system of manipulator. System practice of manipulator? Rocky knows this. Enhancer is to smash stones. Conjurer is to control the mind to change while running. And transmuter is to throw the mind bullet as far as possible. These are the three systems that appeared in the original book. The other systems were not mentioned. What is the practice of manipulator like? Rocky couldn't help but be curious. When they came to the open space outside the house, the patriarch brought many cups of water, but this time the cups were much larger than before. The practice of manipulator is mainly to practice the materialization of thoughts. The first step is to materialize a large enough object in this cup of water. What you materialized seems to be a crystal, so aim for crystallization. The cup in front of me, no, it should be a bowl, a basketball-sized bowl, needs to materialize a bowl-sized crystal. This doesn't seem to be so easy to do. After you complete this step, the second step is to materialize as many independent crystals as possible in a bowl, and they cannot be linked to each other. The third step is to pour out the water in the bowl and repeat the above two steps. If you complete these three practices, your manipulator practice is basically completed. After the patriarch said this, Rocky's eyes began to shine. Interesting, the training of manipulator is like this. The first step is to strengthen the foundation. The second step is to enhance control, and the third step is to strengthen in all aspects. Without water, it is more difficult to control the flow of air, and it is even more difficult to materialize things. I roughly understand. How about confidence? Rocky nodded. The patriarch smiled and said, "Let's get started." Looking at Rocky's excitement, the patriarch stroked his beard. It would take at least a year or two to complete the training of manipulator. Even a genius needs to accumulate experience through daily training. And he finished speaking in one breath to see how far Rocky can go in a short time, and whether this evil little devil will give him a surprise. Chapter 6 New Information Column in the personal dashboard inside Rocky's room. Rocky was sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed, and the key was flowing slowly. It was rotating around Rocky's body. There was basically no leakage of ki, and all of it was tightly wrapped around Rocky. Entanglement. Chanting one of the 4 basic practices, entanglement locks the ki and keeps it in the body. Long-term use of entanglement can make the body stronger, keep youth forever, and focus the mind. A calm mind is a good way to concentrate, and now Rocky's entanglement can basically be watertight, and it has only been about 20 days to achieve this step. And it was during the leisure time of practicing manipulator that Rocky's entanglement has reached the most perfect form that can be achieved at this stage. The next second, the ki around Rocky's body disappeared in an instant, and almost all of it was taken into the body. Absolute. It is also one of the 4 basic practices. This is what Rocky practiced when he was using it to restore his ki, but now Rocky's absolute is also very perfect. Practice. The moment he opened his eyes, the ki burst out, and a weak air flow fluctuation was set off in the whole room. The clan leader who was standing in front of Rocky looked at Rocky in surprise. The form is perfect. He couldn't help but admire it. Even though he had practiced none for decades, the clan leader had to admit that Rocky's practice form was perfect. Although it would definitely need to be polished in the future, the amount of ki in Rocky's body at this stage was enough to use this practice, which was already a perfect form. And it took Rocky only 1 month to do this. He completed 3 of the 4 basic nin practices. And as a nun of manipulator, Rocky had already completed the manipulator practice he had ordered 10 days ago. It only took more than 10 days to complete the enhanced practice of manipulator. Now Rocky, he has mastered the most important part of nun practice, which is the practice of the 4 basic nun practices. The so-called FA is actually the ultimate move of nun, that is the ability to develop. And manipulator is different from other systems. It is necessary to strengthen manipulator training before practicing FA. Otherwise, if you can't materialize anything and you still want to develop abilities, isn't that nonsense? Other systems' ability users are okay. They don't necessarily need strong ki to develop abilities. But manipulator can't. I didn't expect that in just 1 month, you have completed all the basic training, and they're all perfect. Incredible training speed. Little Rocky, your talent is really terrible. You will definitely become a powerful nun in the future. The patriarch smiled and touched Rocky's head. Okay, take a day off today. These days, you have been practicing without sleep and forgetting to eat. This won't work. You must learn to combine work and rest, and practice FA tomorrow. But you can try to think about it today. If you are asked to materialize something, what is the first thing you think of? After the patriarch left, Rocky stood up from the bed. He gently clenched his fist, and the ki that instantly gathered on his fist was much stronger than before. At least now Rocky feels that he and his uncle Gao Yu are probably at the same level. Previously, Gao Yu's amount of ki was about the same as his current level. The size of the ki form seems to be about the same. This is the level of top talent. He was reborn in 1 month, and even the speed of cultivation made the clan leader feel incredible. Rocky changed almost every day. After completing the basic training, Rocky remembered the ability development of the manipulator. Usually, you need to materialize something and then let this thing have special abilities so as to develop your own abilities. Let yourself think about what you want to materialize. Before, I was obsessed with the feeling of practicing to improve my strength, but I never thought about this problem once. Now that I think about it, the first thing that comes to Rocky's mind is not something special. Instead, it is something that basically everyone can think of, but this is indeed the first thing Rocky thought of. Sword. Yes, this is what Rocky thought of first. But do I really have to choose to materialize the sword? You have to know that the materialized things are not indestructible. Compared with the materialized sword, it is more useful to buy a sharp sword, because you can wrap the weapon with gas to enhance the lethality and defense. On the contrary, the materialized sword itself consumes a part of the gas, and the power of wrapping it with gas is naturally not as good as buying a real sword and then strengthening it with gas. So materializing cold weapons or something should be the most unwise choice for manipulator. But if you want to materialize other things, Rocky can't think of what he should materialize. After thinking for more than 10 minutes, Rocky still thought of the sword instead of anything else in his mind while lying on the bed. Once the idea of materialization appears, it is like a brand that is firmly imprinted in his mind. Even if Rocky doesn't think about it, it seems to automatically emerge. This is very strange. Rocky slid off the bed and sat on the ground with his back against the bed. He grabbed his head with both hands. It's not impossible to materialize a sword, but as a manipulator, wouldn't it be stupid to use a sword to fight the enemy in close combat? His manipulator ability can only exert 60% of the power of ki. In other words, his own power is directly cut in half. This is equivalent to using your own weaknesses to attack other strengths. If you're close to the enemy, it's fine if you are fast. As long as you are fast, you don't have to be afraid of close combat. But swords can't develop the ability to speed up. Lightning sword? Rocky was complaining helplessly. Sword and speed. Wait. Rocky suddenly thought of an ability, and this ability seems to be really possible. Combine the two abilities of sword and speed. And if I think about it carefully, if that ability can be developed, it seems quite good. Reevaluation completed. Host personal panel information updated. Rocky was stunned for a moment, and the panel that suddenly popped up brought Rocky back to his senses instantly. That's right. It's been a month, and it's time to make the second modification. The previous countdown has also been reset. Host, Rocky race, human. Kuruta, none talent. Top, physical potential. Intermediate, bloodline ability. Low, there's one more information column on the personal panel. Rocky was stunned for a moment. Does the reevaluation displayed before mean that more personal panel information columns can be displayed? And if I can modify this information, it means that every time the extra information column is reevaluated, I can make myself stronger through my own modification. That's probably what it means. But at the moment, Rocky looked at the new information column carefully. What does this column of intermediate physical potential represent? The potential that can be burst out of the body. My none talent is top level, but with the development of top level talent, my physical potential is only intermediate. So, can we understand it this way? My talent can make me progress faster in a month, but because of the drag of my physical potential, the speed of progress has slowed down. Physical fitness affects my growth rate. Chapter 7, modifying the hiding rules of the information bar. If the physical potential is also modified to the top level, then the speed of his progress will be even more terrifying. Even now, it is already amazing enough. Just when Rocky was thinking about modifying his physical potential to the top level, suddenly, it seemed that there was no rush now. The current speed of progress is already very fast. Compared with modifying the physical potential to the top level, Rocky looked at his so-called bloodline ability and found that it was only low level. That's right. Rocky himself is a member of the Kuruta tribe, and he is a manipulator in normal state. But if he opens the red eyes, will there be any changes? Thinking of this, Rocky went directly to the tea table beside the bed, picked up the kettle, and filled a cup of water in the teacup. Then he sat cross-legged. He exhaled gently and controlled his emotions. Soon, Rocky's eyes began to glow red. Before, Rocky could open the red eyes and maintain the red eyes state for several seconds. Now I don't know how long it can last. Rocky raised his hand to perform the water viewing test and stared at the water cup carefully. The water in the cup suddenly began to surge. This is enhancer. When I opened my red eyes, my mind became an enhancer. This was something Rocky hadn't expected. But if it was enhancer, it would be quite suitable for the ability Rocky had imagined before. Looking at the water that kept overflowing, Rocky quickly put away his mind. Now Rocky didn't stop the red eye state, but wanted to see how long he could maintain the red eye state now. Staring at the clock on the wall, Rocky felt inexplicably tired after 5 minutes. He quickly ended the red eye state. And the moment he ended the state, Rocky felt as if his whole body was about to fall apart. An unprecedented feeling of fatigue came over him. Every part of his body seemed to be very uncomfortable. He took a deep breath. It seems that I can maintain the red eyes for at least 5 minutes now. If I continue to squeeze my potential, I may be able to last longer. And after opening the red eyes, my mind will become an enhancer. This is very interesting. Originally, my mind system is manipulator, and what I want to materialize is a weapon like a sword. For manipulator is not a good choice. But if I add the situation that my mind system becomes enhancer in the red eye state, then this is different. For example, if I materialize a weapon first and then turn on the red eyes form, it will just match the item I materialized. The change of mind system will definitely affect the ability of the manipulator item, but you only need to add a slight setting, such as only being able to maintain it for 5 minutes. With such a restriction, the ability strength of the item should be able to be maintained indefinitely in the initial state. then this problem is solved. Even if you turn on the red eyes and change the mind system, it will not cause too much impact on the materialized item. It even combines the strengths of both mind systems, the balanced combat ability of the enhancer, plus the special ability of the manipulator materialized item. In more understandable terms, I am equivalent to the profession of the magic swordsman or the paladin. If this is the case, then my primary goal of this modification should be bloodline ability. After modifying the bloodline ability, the duration of the fire red eye will definitely increase, and it may even enhance physical strength or the amount of mind energy. At this stage, Rocky needs to develop his own abilities, so the cooperation of the fire red eye is very necessary. So the physical potential and bloodline ability now seem to need to be modified first. Bloodline ability. Top. Looking at the bloodline ability that has been modified according to his own wishes, Rocky suddenly frowned. After the bloodline ability is enhanced, opening the fire red eye state will naturally bring stronger power, but will the burden also increase? On the contrary, it will shorten the time you can open the fire red eye. Rocky was thinking about this problem. Suddenly saw a pop-up prompt box. Host modified the information panel. Do you confirm? Confirm this modification. Estimated countdown for the next modification permission acquisition. 9 days 23 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. It only takes 10 days to modify the bloodline ability to the top level. Rocky nodded, so this time is not long. Just as he was about to confirm, Rocky suddenly stopped. Wait, after the modification, can I still check the interval time required for the modification? Is this a hidden rule? Rocky was stunned for a moment and turned his head to look at the column above. Information column of physical potential. Physical potential. Intermediate top level. If the physical potential is modified to the top level, how long will it take to modify it? Rocky did not choose to confirm and waited for about 10 seconds. Sure enough, the prompt box popped up again. Host has modified the information panel. Do you want to confirm? Confirm this modification. Estimated countdown for the next modification permission acquisition. 19 days 23 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. This time, the time has indeed increased, and it will take a full 20 days. It takes 10 days to modify the bloodline ability to the top level, but it takes 20 days to modify the physical potential. It seems that this interval is not fixed, but more specific to the modified information bar. It can also be seen from the time that modifying the physical potential should bring more enhancement than modifying the bloodline ability. Otherwise, it would not take twice as long. Rocky looked at the flashing prompt. 10 days and 20 days, this is the less natural choice. Wouldn't it be better to modify the bloodline ability first, and then modify the physical potential? It won't take much time anyway. That's right. It doesn't have to be upgraded to the top level directly. Bloodline ability, intermediate, estimated countdown to the next modification permission. 2 days 23 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. It only takes 3 days to upgrade from low level to intermediate level. This is good. It won't waste too much time. At the same time, if the burden brought by modifying the bloodline ability is greater, Rocky can change it back. Sometimes powerful power is not necessarily easy to use with too many restrictions, but it is not as good as the actual combat effect brought by the conventional. Confirm modification. Modification completed. Reevaluating and improving panel information. Obtaining new modification permissions. Modification permission countdown. 2 days 23 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. Now his bloodline ability has been upgraded to intermediate level. Rocky closed his eyes gently, if you remember correctly. After the last modification was completed, Rocky seemed to have reset his state. The fatigue of the body also disappeared instantly. This is also a point that can be used. If a new information bar appears later, Rocky can modify it bit by bit and control the interval time for obtaining the next modification permission within 1 minute. This means that Rocky can reset his status crazily, perhaps modify it when he is near death, and resetting the status can also instantly recover his injuries. This can be tested through experiments later. Now that the status is reset, Rocky wants to see what changes are brought about by the current red eye state. Chapter 8, the final development of Bloodline Upgrade. Rocky closed his eyes and began to adjust his emotions again. The flaming red eyes require strong emotional fluctuations, and among the many emotions, the easiest for Rocky to mobilize is anger. After brewing emotions for more than 10 seconds, Rocky opened his eyes, but it was just the beginning. The flaming red eyes are open. The red eyes are the same as always, but this time there seems to be more starlight. Rocky can't see it, of course, but he can clearly feel that his flaming red eyes are open. It seems to be much easier than opening the flaming red eyes before. The bloodline ability has been improved. Does it make it easier to open the flaming red eyes? Rocky raised his hand to perform the water-seeing ceremony again, and it was still the performance of Enhancer. The water in the cup overflowed, which showed that Rocky's mind system was transformed into Enhancer. Very good. He felt his own mind again, and it seemed to be enhanced a little. Compared with the last time, the opening of the flaming red eyes and the amount of mind energy have been significantly improved. It is about 1.3 times the normal state. Although the improvement is not much, it is already very good. In the Battle of None, the sudden increase of ki, even a little bit, will cause the opponent to make a wrong judgment. And this is enough to determine the outcome of a battle. The Battle of None is different from the battle in other worlds. It is not simply to see who has stronger than ki. Intelligence is particularly important in the Battle of None. After feeling the increase of None ki, Rocky took the initiative to close the state of Fire Red Eye. The next step is to feel his own fatigue. From the degree of fatigue, Rocky can probably guess how long he can open the Fire Red Eye. However, this time it was open for a full minute. After ending the state of Fire Red Eye, Rocky obviously felt that he was not as tired as he imagined. The body did not seem to have any pain. This is not that there is no physical burden when the Fire Red Eye is opened, but it may be that Rocky's safety valve has been raised. In other words, now when the Fire Red Eye is opened, it may not cause any adverse effects for a certain period of time. In other words, there are no side effects. This is interesting. The improvement of bloodline power can enhance the power of the Fire Eyes while reducing the load. Then the bloodline ability must be improved to the top level quickly. The emotional fluctuations of opening the Fire Eyes are reduced, reducing the burden and increasing the energy. From these 3 points of view, if the bloodline ability is improved to the top level, perhaps there is no need to mobilize emotions when opening the Fire Eyes. Just a thought is enough, and it can even last longer after opening, and the energy increased is greater. And the safe opening time is also extended. 3 days is not too long. You can start researching and developing the ability first. Rocky smiled. If he could develop the ability he imagined, then escaping from the Kuruta tribe would not be a problem. Even Rocky has the final say on whether to escape or not. But if you think about it carefully, the difficulty is probably not a little bit big. The next day, Rocky followed the chief to the wild, a remote forest. There were 2 logs placed on the open space in the forest, and Rocky and the chief sat down opposite each other. There's a wooden block in the middle that can be regarded as a table. Little Rocky, I didn't expect that you would improve so quickly in just 1 month. The clan leader praised. You have already completed the basic 4 major actions: entanglement, absolute, and practice. And you have also perfectly completed the practice required by the manipulator. Now you can start the last of the 4 basic actions, the launch. Rocky nodded. Yesterday, I asked you to think about what you would like to materialize if you were asked to materialize something. The patriarch seemed to be looking at Rocky nervously at this moment. Manipulators are a little different. Basically, the choice of materialization determines the direction of the ability user's development. Although the abilities are so strange that people can't just think of them casually, they can be roughly guessed. For example, containers are mostly auxiliary ability users. Mind beasts may have auxiliary abilities or combat abilities, which is uncertain. Another type is obviously a combat weapon, cold weapons, or hot weapons, which are mostly not auxiliary abilities. And this type of direct combat type items usually have very demanding ability activation conditions. In fact, it is not recommended. I want to materialize a sword, Rocky said decisively. The patriarch, who was originally expecting, suddenly didn't know what to say when he heard this answer. After looking at Rocky for a long time, he said, "Anything else?" "No." When the clan leader asked me, the first thing that came to my mind was this. The clan leader looked a little strange, and abilities were strange. Especially for manipulator users, the first thing that came to mind was basically impossible to change. Of course, it's not impossible to change, but it's very difficult. Even if it's changed, the power of the materialized thing is usually not very good. And the clan leader himself is not a manipulator user, so he doesn't know how to persuade Rocky. He can only sigh. Although swords are not recommended, Rocky is at least talented, and maybe his future will not be too bad. Even if the talent is bad, it should be okay. Okay, what kind of sword do you plan to materialize? Rocky smiled and said, "Grandpa will know when I materialize it." Do you know that it is impossible for the materialized things to achieve the effect of the real objects 100%? I know. The clan leader nodded and said, "It seems that you remember what I told you before." Then Grandpa will not talk nonsense. You start. Rocky lowered his head and began to open his hands, trying to gather his thoughts. At the same time, he closed his eyes and silently began to imagine in his mind the sword he wanted to materialize. The sword body is black, the hilt is silver, and the pattern is very special. One side has something similar to the Western sword guard, and the other side extend from the top of the hilt, bending at the same angle to form a shape similar to spreading wings. When Rocky simulated every part of the sword in his mind bit by bit, the thoughts gathered in front of Rocky, and a sword exactly the same as Rocky imagined appeared in front of him. And the process of its appearance also surprised the clan leader. White crystals emerged from all directions. They were obviously materialized long swords, but it was more like the crystals that appeared when Rocky performed the water ceremony were first materialized. Then these crystals were pieced together to form a long sword. At the same time, there was a sound similar to that of broken glass. The clan leader looked at the sword that Rocky materialized. Sure enough, the things that the manipulator's ability users materialized could not be ordinary. This sword is between the size of a giant sword and an ordinary long sword. The shape is so unique that it is obviously impossible to be just like an ordinary weapon. I just don't know what kind of ability Rocky will develop it into in the future. Rocky opened his eyes, and the sword floated in the air at the moment of materialization. It's done. It really materialized. The sword of the wise king. Chapter 9, Impossible Ideas. Rocky grabbed the sword he had materialized. His idea had been completely replicated in appearance, but the materialized item was just an ordinary thing after all. A sword can only be a sword. Compared to a real sword, its hardness has yet to be tested. Although the sword now looks almost as tall as Rocky, almost the same height as Rocky. The sword is 1.3 meters long, which is not a particularly long weapon, but it feels quite inconsistent to be held in the hand of Rocky, a kid who is as tall as the sword. However, as the person who materialized the sword body is weightless to Rocky. He can swing the sword very easily. Even after completing a materialization, Rocky can make the sword disappear and reappear at will. At the moment of disappearance, the sword body seemed to be shattered, turning into countless tiny white crystals and dissipating directly. When it reappeared, the tip of the sword was facing up, standing straight in front of Rocky. He easily grabbed the sword and swung it a few times. The clan leader beside him was a little surprised at the way Rocky's materialized weapon appeared and disappeared. Usually it appears directly, and he doesn't understand why Rocky's materialized weapon appears in such a strange way. Of course, this situation is usually caused by the thoughts of the ability user. Although I don't know what the meaning of such a change is, if it is just for the sake of looking good or handsome, then it is a complete waste of none. Any slight change and change in none will lead to an increase in the consumption of none. And if this change is only applied for the sake of looking good, then it is meaningless. Came to Rocky's side. The clan leader grandfather bent down slightly. "Little Rocky, is this what you want to materialize?" Rocky nodded. "Have you ever thought about what kind of ability this weapon has? Indestructible? Or deadly poison? Or can it have super destructive power on some special things?" The clan leader is guiding Rocky to develop his own abilities. After all, Rocky is just an 8-year-old kid, and the clan leader doesn't want Rocky to simply think that materializing something means he has completed the practice of FA. "I've thought about it a long time ago." Rocky smiled. He raised his hand and threw the sword in his hand directly at a tree 5 or 6 meters away. The sword flew straight in the air and pierced directly into the tree trunk. Boom! A dull sound sounded. The clan leader grandfather didn't quite understand what Rocky meant by this. Is this a sword as a hidden weapon? If so, a sword is too big for a hidden weapon and is not suitable at all. And if you want to materialize a hidden weapon, something like a dart is more suitable. But this is a good idea. Manipulator is also very strong in the ability of emitter and can exert 80% of its power. If Rocky's idea is like this, it is a good ability. Little Rocky, do you want to use the weapon as a hidden weapon? If that's the case, Grandpa suggests that you reduce the size of the sword you materialize and materialize a few more swords at the same time. 12 or 10 are fine. The more the better. It depends on whether these weapons have special abilities. While speaking, Rocky shook his head quickly. No. I don't want to use the sword as a hidden weapon, but as a coordinate. Coordinates? The patriarch was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding what Rocky meant. Where the sword is, I can teleport to the sword's position. Rocky's eyes flashed. Teleport? The chief said in surprise. In Rocky's imagination, the weapon can be thrown anywhere at will, and in the process of the weapon flying, Rocky can teleport to the position of the weapon at any time, and his hand can easily grasp the hilt of the sword. The way of fighting is to teleport to this position and grasp the weapon at the moment the weapon reaches the target point and exert a stronger impact force to cause a powerful attack on the enemy. At the same time, if Rocky teleports multiple times when the sword flies towards the enemy, he can also exert a stronger impact force. The power can be superimposed and coordinated with the mind, and the attack will be stronger. This idea was not thought up by Rocky himself, but when he determined that the object he wanted to materialize was a sword, he thought of many sword abilities. Among them, Rocky thinks the most interesting and comprehensive ability comes from the ability of Prince Noctis in the Final Fantasy world. And the way of summoning and disappearing the sword that was imagined before was not for the sake of beauty and handsomeness. In fact, Rocky has also thought that the sword will not disappear normally, but will surround him in an invisible form. You can imagine that the sword is rotating around Rocky, and when Rocky needs it, it can instantly appear in front of Rocky or in his hand. And this method also brings another effect, which is defense. Once someone suddenly attacks Rocky, the sword will resist the attack by itself, although it is not known how effective this idea is for defense. But Rocky is not worried about this. As his mind energy improves, his defense will naturally increase. Rocky has many ideas about abilities. There is definitely more than one sword that needs to be materialized. Impossible. Suddenly, the voice of the clan leader pulled Rocky back to reality from the imaginary world. Impossible. Rocky looked at the clan leader grandfather. The clan leader grandfather nodded. Your idea is impossible to realize. Although he was surprised that Rocky could imagine such an ability. But to realize such an ability, it is very difficult. Instant teleportation. Such an ability is too abnormal. Usually, the mind follows a basic principle. The stronger the power you want to get, the more price you have to pay. The more powerful the ability, the more restrictions it usually has, and some abilities are even dangerous to the ability holder. Once a certain rule is violated, not only may the ability be lost, but even death may occur. And Rocky only has this idea. Teleportation is basically impossible to achieve. Is it so absolute? Grandpa Patriarch. Rocky doesn't think it's impossible. Little Rocky, you probably don't understand what the 4 words teleportation mean. To put it in a language you can understand, if you want to achieve this ability, you have to spend decades or even hundreds of years practicing crazily. And the patriarch's tone became more serious. You also need to devote yourself to an extreme emotion or state before you can hope to develop this ability. This is based on your current terrible talent. If it's an ordinary nun, I will tell him directly that it's impossible. After a pause, the patriarch continued to speak. Even if it is finally developed successfully, it is probably only instant movement within a small range, and the distance may not exceed 10 meters at most, or even less. So the ability you just mentioned is an impossible idea. Chapter 10 Nun's equivalent exchange looking at Rocky, whose expression changed after he finished speaking. The chief did not know if he had said too much. He paused and comforted him. Little Rocky, don't be discouraged. With your talent, there is still hope. Let's stop here for today. Your uncle wants to see you these days, and you have been staying in the house without going out. Do you want to go see him? No, Rocky shook his head. Grandpa Chief, let me stay alone for a while. Hearing this, the chief thought that Rocky was sad because he spoke too harshly, but he did not know how to comfort Rocky, so he could only sigh silently. Okay, then you rest here alone for a while, think about other abilities, and you don't have to develop teleportation. After speaking, the chief left, and he seemed to be thinking about how to cheer Rocky up. And here Rocky was lying on the wooden block alone. The index finger of his left hand gently tapped the wooden block. Dong, is it really impossible? Rocky raised his hand, and the sword of the wise king appeared in front of him. Looking at the black blade and the exaggerated patterns, the shape can be said to be quite handsome. However, if there is no matching ability, then no matter how beautiful the sword is, it is useless. If it is simply practiced, it is difficult to cultivate this kind of power. For example, Killua, who converted his mind energy into electricity, was also able to successfully convert his mind energy into electricity because he had been electrocuted for many years. Instantaneous movement. It is indeed very difficult to develop such an ability. It is not known what kind of training is needed to develop it. In the original work, the ability that can be related to Rocky's imaginary instant movement is probably only related to Nobu, who appeared in the Chimera Ant chapter. Nobu's non-four-dimensional apartment is a similar ability to space transfer. There is also the leopard of the Chimera Ant, whose ability developed later is also to instantly move people to a mind space. So instant movement is not impossible to achieve. However, whether it is Nobu or the Chimera Ant's instant movement, it is to move the target to the mind space. It can be seen that in order to achieve instant movement, it seems that a mind space setting needs to be added during the movement process. If you move directly to the target location, only one person has this ability. Only the Nanika Analuka of the Zoldyck family can do it. At Killua's request, Ilmi was teleported directly to the castle of the Zoldyck family. That is the real teleportation. Slowly sitting up, Rocky glanced at the sword on the wooden block. Conventional training probably can't achieve this ability. Since conventional methods don't work, then we have to use unconventional methods. And the unconventional methods are also very simple. Restrictions and oaths. For restrictions and oaths, Rocky doesn't reject them. It's just a way to gain power. It's not a bad thing. Of course, in the world of Hunter, restrictions and oaths seem to be rejected under normal circumstances. After all, this is a double-edged sword, and in most cases it will hurt the nun himself. Restrictions set conditions and use them under specific conditions. If restrictions are just appetizers, then oaths are really deadly. A pledge can be understood as sacrificing something of oneself in exchange: freedom, life, or emotions. Anything that can be thought of can be used as a pledge. First of all, Rocky does not intend to set the constraints too complicated. After all, the constraints must be strict to a certain extent to allow none to get a strong increase. Otherwise, the normal conditions will not have much impact on none. It can only be used on the weapons I materialize, and every weapon that is materialized will be materialized permanently, continuously consuming my energy. Anyway, in Rocky's conception, the materialized weapons also need to be invisible, untouchable, or even imperceptible, surrounding himself for defense anytime and anywhere. If it can be recovered, then the defensive ability will be gone. It is just right to set such a condition, just in time to borrow this to strengthen the ability. Although the enhancement may be negligible, it is better to have it than not. And because it is a permanent materialization, if the weapon is snatched, Rocky will not be able to recover it beyond a certain distance. When the weapon is taken away, there is no way to retrieve the weapon, and it is necessary to continuously consume gas to maintain the existence of the materialized weapon. This is also a risky thing. Even so, the restriction is just an appetizer, and the real big deal is the oath. For the oath, Rocky will not gamble his life like Kurta did when developing his ability. That would be too uneconomical because Rocky has more valuable things than life. But whether it will work or not depends on waiting. Time flies. 2 days have passed. In the past 2 days, Rocky practiced step by step and did not mention the development of teleportation at all. The clan leader also thought that Rocky had given up, but seeing that Rocky didn't seem very happy, the clan leader was also a little worried. Children tend to get stuck in a dead end. If Rocky doesn't recover his mood as soon as possible, it may affect Rocky's practice. So the clan leader has to think of a way. But what the clan leader doesn't know is that Rocky is not depressed at all, but uneasy. Whether his idea can be established depends on this one move. The reason for waiting for 2 days is very simple, just to wait for the modification permission to be obtained. Because Rocky's idea is the conditions of the oath. Sacrifice your talent. It shouldn't be impossible to develop a teleportation as a sacrifice of the top nin talent. However, once you sacrifice your talent, you will become a person without any talent, and it can even be said that it may become extremely difficult to activate the mind. In this case, what's the use of gaining the ability? This involves a situation, the equivalent exchange of mind. Rocky almost developed a teleportation at the cost of completely losing none afterwards. Basically, the price Rocky paid should have far exceeded what is needed to develop teleportation. If Rocky, who has lost his talent, can regain the top talent by modifying the permissions, then everything will not be a problem. If a top nin talent is not enough, the top physical potential talent, the top bloodline ability talent, these combined Rocky does not believe that it will not succeed. Today, let's experiment. Of course, Rocky can't use the talent to test directly at the beginning. What if he can't recover after the sacrifice? So he needs to experiment first. The experiment uses his own bloodline ability. Anyway, it is only intermediate now. If he really loses his bloodline ability, it doesn't seem to be a bad thing for Rocky. With the reduction of bloodline ability as the condition of the oath, develop the ability to control the sword within a certain range. This is equivalent to a flying sword, and Rocky made a vow and simply set a condition. The next second, he looked at the sword in front of him, and the sword body trembled slightly with a thought. It didn't seem to fly, but this was because Rocky was not strong enough now. There was no weight when holding a long sword, but it seemed to feel the substantial weight when controlling it with his mind. Rocky can't raise his sword yet, but it proves that Rocky's idea is feasible. Open the information panel, bloodline ability, low level. As the modification line appears, Rocky's eyes shine. Yes, it can be modified. Then developing instant teleportation will be no problem. Chapter 11, Ability in Exchange of Talent. In the Kuruta tribe's settlement, on the top of a cliff at the highest point, Rocky was lying here with a big word on his face full of sweat. But at this moment, Rocky was smiling. Finally, I'm up, raised his hand, and picked up the sword of the wise king to block the sunlight that was shining on Rocky. Looking through the sunlight, the dark sword body was now faintly glowing with a fluorescence of white crystals. This is considered a successful development. Flashing continuously, 37 times, finally, I'm up. Rocky sat up and supported his body with his left hand. His arm was shaking a little. His idea was successful, and the price was talent in exchange. The ability exchange for talent. It really achieved the effect Rocky wanted perfectly. The only flaw was that each flash required a lot of energy. With Rocky's current amount of energy, he could only flash 11 times, and all the energy would be exhausted. If the running energy is not smooth, it may even cause the flash to fail, and the position of the weapon cannot be flashed directly. Climbing the mountain is the method Rocky thought of to practice his abilities. Of course, the so-called climbing is not really climbing the mountain, but Rocky throws the sword directly upward from the bottom of the mountain. With Rocky's current strength, the sword can only be thrown a distance of more than 10 meters, which is already very good. After all, Rocky is just an 8-year-old kid. And because the amount of mental energy required for flashing is too much, Rocky has to reduce the amount of energy wrapped around the sword. The reduction of energy will slow down the speed of throwing the sword and limit the flying distance. Now Rocky has not practiced the abilities of transmuter, enhancer, and emitter, which has a great impact on his abilities. After 11 consecutive flashes, he can only fly from the bottom of the cliff to a position of about 100 meters. Logically, Rocky should not fly only to this height, because after each flash, Rocky will fall again in the second when he throws the sword again. So after 11 consecutive flashes, he can only reach a position of 100 meters. If he wants to get infinitely close to the limit distance, Rocky needs a lot of practice. After 5 minutes from the bottom of the cliff, Rocky finally reached the top of the cliff by flashing. After flashing 10 times in a row, Rocky's ki was basically consumed. At this time, Rocky would stab the sword into the cliff and take a short rest to restore ki. And Rocky's speed of recovering ki was quite good. The top nin talent allowed Rocky to control ki perfectly and quickly recover ki. After flashing 37 times in 5 minutes, he finally reached the top of the cliff. It only takes 5 minutes to get here from the bottom of the mountain. Under normal circumstances, even for none, it is absolutely impossible to get from the mountain to the top of this vertical steep cliff in 5 minutes. Even for enhancer none, with certain climbing knowledge, it takes 10 minutes. The first step of the escape plan at the critical moment is completed. The reason for this conclusion is that Rocky tried to climb in the enhancer state. By multiplying his own climbing speed by 20 times, it takes 10 minutes. Even when the clan was exterminated, there were Yuvajin outside. As long as the opponent did not catch him in the first 30 meters, he would not be able to catch him later. No matter how strong a person is, there is no place to use leverage on the vertical and smooth cliff wall. Even if there is a place to use leverage, it is impossible to jump vertically. If the height of the mistake is not high, you can still rely on the protection of the mind when falling. If you fall from a height of 100 or 200 meters, you may not be safe. Rocky looked back at the road behind the cliff. This is a canyon, and the terrain on both sides is slowly descending. This is very good for Rocky. Relying on the ability of flashing, Rocky can achieve extremely fast descent and flash directly from the top of the cliff to the bottom. If an enhancer nun suddenly jumps and wants to descend at the same speed as himself, then if he accidentally jumps over, the height difference formed will be hundreds of meters. Regardless of whether he could catch himself after falling, he would probably die or get injured. This escape route is perfect. But what Rocky has to do now is to intensify his training and increase his mental energy. At the same time, he also needs to intensify his training of emitter and transmuter so that he can flicker farther and the power of flicker can be enhanced. Rocky sat on the cliff and began to close his eyes to recover his mental energy. He was also thinking about a question. That is the name of none. Now Rocky has used the oath to develop the two abilities of flicker and flying sword at the cost of his talent and bloodline ability. But abilities can't be without names. The ability of flickering is called Phantom Shift. The ability to control flying swords is called Phantom Sword. Well, these two abilities are called this, but both abilities are just the names of individual abilities, and, generally speaking, they still need to be named clearly. Just like Kurapika's ability, the contract chain, this is the name of Kurapika's ability, although each chain has a separate ability and name. But they are all branches developed under the general ability. My ability is called the Power of the King. This name is probably because Rocky hopes to develop all the other abilities of Noctis in the future. Other swords are also materialized, such as the Blade of the Cultivation King, the Lion King Twin Swords, the Iksha King Sword, the Overlord Great Sword, and so on. Each sword has its own unique ability. Both the Apparition and the Phantom Sword can be used at the same time. And now Rocky has not yet developed the ability of the Sword of the Wise King. The ability of the Sword of the Wise King is very strong. Every attack action does not require the weapon to be thrown out. It can instantly move to the desired position and attack the enemy directly. This ability feels even more excessive just talking about it. After all, even the throwing action is not needed. Using it in a real battle is like assassinating the enemy in person. You just made an action on the spot, and the next second the sword blade directly stabbed into someone's body. Such an ability is a bit against the sky. If you want to develop this ability, you can imagine that the price you have to pay is probably not a little bit. Even if you sacrifice your nun talent through the oath, it may not be enough. Open your personal information panel. Nun talent. Top. Physical potential. Intermediate. Bloodline ability. Low level. Estimated countdown for the next modification permission acquisition. 54, days 18, hours 33, minutes 18 seconds. The next modification will take a full 55 days, nearly 2 months. The reason for this is that Rocky sacrificed his top nin talent through the oath, and then changed it back to the top talent through modification. Unlike the previous 1 month, this time there is no cultivation talent, and the modification from nothing to something takes 55 days. It can also be seen from here that different degrees of modification require different times. Even this seems to be based on Rocky's own situation. Here Rocky is curious about one thing. Is the limit of talent really the top? Chapter 12. The shock of apparition. After all, there is no limit to the modification, and there is no limit to the content of Rocky's modification. If Rocky modifies it to be a heaven-defying enlightenment, or God level, saint level, or even add some precise descriptive words. For example, the ultimate talent that surpasses all creatures, etc. I don't know if such modifications are possible. And how terrifying will the changes brought about after the modification are completed? This question also suddenly occurred to Rocky. It can be regarded as after the ability development is completed. Rocky feels that he should not limit his own thinking. From another perspective, it is not impossible, but if you want to try, you have to wait for 55 days. What's more annoying is that in the last modification, Rocky did not check the new information column and don't know what the new information column that appeared after the reevaluation is. After checking, no new information column was found. Rocky feels that there are only 2 possibilities. The first is that the last modification was too conservative, resulting in no new information column. The second is that if the information column has not been viewed, the information of the information column will not be displayed during the period of reobtaining permissions. So if you want to view it, you can only wait until the next modification permission is obtained and the reevaluation is completed before you can view it. Little Rocky. Suddenly, when Rocky was recovering his mind, he heard shouts from below. Rocky frowned. It sounded like the adults of the Kuruta tribe. The deep voice couldn't be a kid, and he could tell they were anxious. Rocky stood up and tossed the sword in his hand. He raised his hand and threw it violently downward. The gravity plus the power and speed of Rocky's active burst of energy made him fall to a height of 150 meters in a few breaths. Phantom shift instantly appeared in the air. Rocky, who looked like a white crystal, grabbed the Sage King's sword and turned it handsomely in the air. He threw the sword violently again. This time, less than 10 meters from the ground, Rocky shifted again. Turning quickly at a position of 10 meters, he landed steadily and released his power. Rocky released the sword of the Sage King, and the sword gradually became transparent and dissipated, automatically floating around Rocky's body and slowly rotating around Rocky. From now on, Rocky needs to consume Nin all the time to keep the sword around his body. However, if Rocky doesn't want to, others can't touch or see it. This is not a hidden ability, but a part of none. Although the amount of ki consumed is not small for Rocky now. But think about it, as his strength increases, this level of consumption may not be able to keep up with his ki recovery in the future. Found it here. Suddenly, a Kuruta tribe member who had never seen before appeared more than 10 meters in front of Rocky. He seemed to look at Rocky in surprise. Just now, he seemed to feel a wave of none in the sky. But suddenly Rocky appeared in front of him, which was a bit strange. What on earth is going on? At this time, Rocky looked at the other party. Who are you? Why are you looking for me? Hearing this, the other party looked at Rocky and was a little speechless. You little brat. Even if you go out to play, At least say hello to the chief. Every year, there are children who get lost in the forest. Although the beasts in the forest have been driven out, it is still very dangerous. The other party came up and said. Rocky finally understood. So the chief probably thought he was lost. So he sent someone out to find him. After the person was found, the other tribesmen finally breathed a sigh of relief. Back to the chief's grandfather's house, Rocky found that most of the tribesmen had gathered here. Looking at these men and women, they all told him not to run around next time. Although some people look fierce, they're not bad. Although they check their bodies violently, it seems that the hundreds of people in the Kuruta tribe are very united. The atmosphere in the tribe is pretty good. The flow of ki on more than a dozen of the tribesmen was very strong. Rocky was a little surprised that there were more than a dozen none in the Kuruta tribe, which had more than 100 people. This probability was already quite terrifying. Under normal circumstances and environments, the probability of a nun being born was 1 in a million, and the Kuruta tribe was almost close to 1 in 10. However, the probability of none being born in Meteor Street was also very high. The environment and living conditions also had a great impact. In addition, the Kuruta tribe had a special bloodline of fiery red eyes. At the same time, because of Rocky's disappearance this time, Rocky seemed to see Kurapika in the crowd, although Kurapika was only 12 years old now. There was a gap with the age of 17 when she first appeared, but the general appearance could still be seen. Seeing Kurapika, Rocky's eyes lit up and he was ready to say a few words to Kurapika. After all, this was a formal meeting with one of the members of the protagonist group. However, he was pulled into the house by the clan leader grandfather. "Little Rocky, what's wrong with you today? Why don't you practice well and go out to play? What I said last time was a bit harsh. Don't think too much. You are still young and everything is possible. Don't be discouraged because of this." Hearing the words of the clan leader, Rocky smiled helplessly. Does the old man think that he spoke too harshly and made him lose confidence and enthusiasm in practice? "I went out because I wanted to find a place to test my abilities." "Oh, so that's it. That's good. You have to concentrate on practicing. Little Rocky, you have a good talent and you will definitely." Halfway through his words, the clan leader was suddenly stunned. "Wait, what did you say just now?" "I said I went out to find a place to test my abilities." The clan leader quickly squatted down and grabbed Rocky's shoulders with both hands. "Have you developed your abilities?" Rocky nodded. "There is nothing to hide. Besides, the clan leader has been teaching me wholeheartedly these days, and Rocky just happened to have some questions about none that he wanted to ask him." "What ability did you develop?" Rocky smiled, raised his hand, and the sword of the wise king reappeared directly out of thin air. The white crystal suddenly reappeared to form the sword body. The patriarch had seen this appearance in other ways and was not surprised. But the next second, Rocky threw the sword into the room. The next second, while the patriarch was still wondering what Rocky was going to do, Rocky appeared in the air in an instant, grabbed the sword, and flipped to the ground beautifully. He swung the sword in his hand and made a sword flower, then let go of the sword and disappeared again. After doing all this, the patriarch looked at Rocky with his mouth wide open in surprise. You really succeeded? It was only a few days ago. How could such an amazing ability be developed so quickly?" What did Rocky do? Teleport. Although there is a restriction that weapons are needed, teleportation can only be performed at the place where the weapons reach. But this is also teleportation. Even at this moment, the patriarch did not dare to imagine how terrifying this ability would be in battle in the future when it matures. What's the name of this ability? Apparition. Swallowing his saliva gently, the clan leader looked at Rocky with a complicated look. Excited, and a little worried. As a person who has experienced it, it is clear that this kid may have touched the constraints and oaths unknowingly. Otherwise, he would never have developed this ability. Chapter 13, The Heritage of the Kuruta Tribe. Looking at Rocky in front of him, the chieftain felt a little heavy. Little Rocky, he seemed to want to say something, and Rocky thought that the chieftain would be surprised, but also happy. After all, he successfully developed the ability that he thought was impossible to develop. But the performance of the chieftain grandfather made Rocky a little confused. But when Rocky saw the worry in the chieftain's eyes, he roughly understood. He should have guessed that I used the power of constraints and oaths, and it is very likely that I have completed my current ability by sacrificing a particularly strong oath. It must be said that although the chieftain is not necessarily a very strong nin user, his vision is still correct. I did pay a very painful price to obtain this ability. However, if it is a normal situation, after I obtain this ability, the corresponding thing is that I will permanently lose my talent in none. This price is indeed very high, but who told me that I can modify my information column? What do you want to say, Chief Grandfather? Rocky asked. Seeing Rocky asking, the chief took a deep breath and said, "What kind of constraints and oaths did you use to develop this ability?" As expected, the other party would ask this question, and Rocky was not surprised. However, Rocky just shook his head lightly and said, "No constraints and oaths." The chief was stunned for a moment. He was waiting for Rocky to tell him about the painful oath he made. However, he didn't expect Rocky to not have it. Impossible. The chief also thought about it for a long time, but I couldn't think of a good rule, so I gave up, but after giving up, I developed it unconsciously. It seems that I was born with this ability and don't need to develop it. At present, this is the only way to say it. Although it seems a bit exaggerated, it is not tenable at all. But at this time, the more exaggerated the statement, the better. After all, his talent has shown a non-human level, and it is not too much to add that he is born with some kind of none, and the chief doesn't seem to know whether to doubt this statement that has no credibility at all, or choose to believe that everything is talent. There are also natural nin people. It is normal for some nun to suddenly have extremely powerful powers after a strange encounter. But this happened in front of him and to his own people, which made the chief a little unsure for a while. "Do you really have no restrictions?" "No." Rocky smiled and said, "There are no restrictions. As long as the weapon is in place and I can feel it, I can move freely." Even Rocky himself did not expect this situation. If the ability exchange for talent has a distance limit, it would be too rubbish. The chief carefully walked around Rocky 3 times, and after observing him, he could only sigh helplessly. It is naturally impossible to see any changes in Rocky with the naked eye. Okay, maybe you, a devilish little kid, are born with this kind of devilish nun. In the eyes of the chief, Rocky's ability is not only used for combat, but also has certain auxiliary capabilities. By the way, Grandpa Chief, I want to ask you a question. The chief seemed to be still thinking about Rocky's nin problem and seemed a little absent-minded. Ask it. He casually replied to Rocky. "I want to ask what exactly is the barrier that Uncle Gayua mentioned before." Hearing this, the chieftain seemed to come back to his senses and looked at Rocky carefully. After thinking for a while, he sighed. "With a talent like yours, it's okay to let you know these things in advance." Originally, the chieftain wanted Rocky to clarify the path he wanted to take and then hand over the power of the Kuruta tribe to Rocky in the process. Help Rocky complete his ability development, but who could have thought that Rocky would develop such a heaven-defying ability in a short period of time? Hearing the chieftain's words, Rocky was also very curious. Originally, he just wanted to study the barrier style, but now it seems that there are unexpected gains. "Come with me." The chieftain took Rocky to the back door, and after coming out of the chieftain's house, the two headed towards the mountains and forests. And the direction happened to be the cliff where Rocky practiced apparition before. Soon the two came to the bottom of the cliff, but this was not the place Rocky chose when he practiced. From the place where Rocky practiced, the straight line distance to the left should be about 700 to 800 meters. Coming to a huge stone on the edge of the cliff, the chief raised his hands and moved the stone away with a loud shout. Inside was a dark cave. Although the cave was not too big, and the walls of the cave were very damp, the reflection could be clearly seen, which was the effect of water flow on the wall. "Let's go." The chief bent down and led the way into the cave. In normal walking speed, he walked for about 5 or 6 minutes. Finally, a faint light appeared. Rocky followed in, and there was actually a space inside about 60 or 70 square meters wide. Here is, looking at the strange totems and patterns that flickered faintly on the wall, Rocky frowned. "These are an important inheritance of my Kuruta tribe, the Word of God. The word of God? Rocky was stunned for a moment. What is that? Why have I never heard of it? No. Is there such a thing in the world of hunter, ex-hunter? The divine characters can be called the characters of mind. Even if a person has no ability, if he uses his mind to carve the divine characters, he can use the power of the divine characters to make his mind burst out with some strange abilities. Rocky was completely confused when he heard this. There is such a thing. These divine characters are the result of the continuous inheritance of the Kuruta tribe over the years. The barrier style you mentioned is the application of the divine characters. Using mind to carve the divine characters, you can open a barrier similar to defense. Rocky frowned and searched quickly in his mind. Does Hunter x Hunter have such ability? Wait, these totems seem to have been seen before. When Gon was in the Sky Arena and Wing asked him not to use mind, didn't the rope tied to his little finger have this pattern? There is also a similar pattern on the metal box that Jean left for Gon. In addition, in the copy of Lei Jia and the 14 Demons, the pattern on the boxer's ring seems to be somewhat similar to the one in this cave. Rocky pointed at the similar totem and asked, "What is the function of this god character, Grandpa?" The chief took a look and said, "The function of that god character is that it can enhance the ability of the ability user within the range of the god character." Why? Do you feel familiar with it? Rocky was stunned for a moment, and before he could answer, he heard the chief continue to talk. That's right. After all, the so-called god character sometimes appears in the ability of none. You feel familiar with it, or maybe you have this kind of god character in your ability. Chapter 14, the incredible power of the word God, will appear in the abilities of none? Really? Rocky seems to have no memory of this. Throughout the entire Hunter x Hunter world, those so-called none don't seem to have such a thing as the word God. If you insist, some abilities do have some special patterns and the like. Is this the so-called word God? And Rocky remembers that the place where the word God appears most is Greed Island. Jean and others developed Greed Island. Did they use the power of the word God? Otherwise, it would be too difficult to achieve the magical effects on Greed Island. Under normal circumstances, if you want to develop an ability based on Greed Island, you can create an ability. Even if you combine more than a dozen top, none, to jointly develop an ability. Just like the Bomb Demon Trio, developing an ability together will definitely cost a heavy price. And this price is enough to kill these people. But they are safe and sound, and they can even run out to attend the meeting held at the Hunter headquarters. This is a bit unbelievable. If the power of the divine word is applied to it, then perhaps the difficulty is not so high. It's just gold. How to control the divine word. And does the divine word really have that effect? If even the Greed Island can be developed with the help of the divine word, then it doesn't seem so difficult for me to develop my own ability. Thinking of this, Rocky was a little excited. "Grandpa, can you teach me to learn these divine words?" "Of course." The patriarch smiled and said, "Isn't it for you to learn these divine words?" The patriarch walked to the wall and raised his hand to touch the divine words carved on the wall. These are the most precious wealth accumulated by the Kuruta tribe over the generations. If you can learn them, then even if all the people of the Kuruta tribe die, as long as you are alive, the Kuruta tribe will never be destroyed. This sentence made Rocky stunned for a long time. Could this old man know the fate of the Kuruta tribe? No, no way. If he knew, would he still be so calm? Accept death calmly? Probably not. Seeing the expectation in the other party's eyes, it seems that the other party is looking forward to it just because of his amazing talent. That's why he said this. Not because he knew that the Kuruta tribe was going to be exterminated. Now Rocky opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the chieftain. "Okay, let me start teaching you the first one. There is no special way to master the word God, and there is no special way to learn. Children with talent can understand it, but people without talent can't learn it anyway. So whether you can master it depends on yourself." After saying that, the chieftain came to Huadun. From a pile of porcelain placed on the side, he took out a white porcelain plate and placed it in front of Rocky. Then he poured a pile of sand from the sandbag on the side into the porcelain plate. For the first pattern, try to use your thoughts to replicate it on the sand. This process is equivalent to practicing the power of your three systems. conjurer, emitter, and transmuter, releasing thoughts and transforming them into special patterns, and then leaving them in the sand, is indeed a test of the ability to transform, operate, and release the three systems. Well, let's give it a try to see if I have this talent. If not, it is equivalent to practicing the power of these three systems. The chieftain placed his hands on another porcelain plate. Watch my moves. He opened his hands and released his thoughts from his palms. It was not like what Rocky imagined, condensing the air into a certain shape, like a carving knife leaving a fixed pattern on an object. Instead, a whole group of air in a misty state directly moved towards the sandpile bit by bit. However, during this process, the air seemed to automatically gather along a certain special trajectory. Soon, a strange pattern appeared on the sandpile. Rocky took a look at the sandpile, and there was no change. The sandpile itself was still the same shape as before, but there was a new divine word pattern on it. However, this pattern was very small, only the size of a fingernail. Touch it. Rocky reached out and touched the sandpile. It's so hard. It's like it's glued together. The patriarch nodded and said, "Yes, this is the effect of this divine word. It adds a strong and integral effect. This is the simplest and most basic divine word. You can try it. You only have half an hour. If you can't master it in half an hour, it means you don't have the talent in this area. With your talent at the level of conjurer, transmuter, and emitter, you should have no problem learning to carve this divine word." After saying that, the patriarch stepped aside and said nothing, but quietly waited for Rocky's results. Half an hour is already quite tight. Rocky didn't dare to waste time. He started trying directly. The first attempt was completely at a loss as to where to start. The air floated back and forth on the sandpile, and there was no change at all. This situation lasted for a full 10 minutes, and Rocky began to sweat coldly on his forehead. Is it really that he has no talent at all? Mastering the word God is not the same as practicing none. The subjective does not need to be so strong. Relax, little Rocky. Even if you can't learn the word God, you are still a genius. You don't need to force yourself to master the word God. The patriarch was trying to persuade himself, but Rocky couldn't hear a word. But the patriarch's words made Rocky realize something. The word God is not none, so why not just let it go? Closing his eyes, Rocky began to adjust his breath, relaxing himself as much as possible, and even unconsciously entered the perfect state of entanglement. This state made the patriarch beside him stunned for a moment. Perfect entanglement, as if integrated with nature. This kid's talent in none is really terrible. Speaking in his heart, the patriarch suddenly felt a familiar fluctuation. On the sandpile, the air seemed to be absorbed by the sand and was pouring into the sand quickly. And soon a golden prototype of the word God appeared on it. The clan leader, this kid, he even mastered the word God so easily. His original intention was just to let Rocky sense the word God in half an hour, not to let Rocky really draw it so easily. However, with the appearance of the first word God, Rocky's state has not stopped, and Rocky, who closed his eyes, did not even open his eyes. He pushed the porcelain plate aside, grabbed a handful of sand from the sandbag and threw in front of him, and began to draw the second word God. This state made the clan leader's heart beat faster. In our words, it was a state of enlightenment. The word God is the embodiment of the rules of the operation of ki, and this rule exists everywhere, and every part of the world is a rule. Rocky displayed his perfect entanglement, which was almost integrated with nature. It was basically like looking at the rules of ki with a magnifying glass. The clan leader was extremely excited now. This child is simply a gift from God to the Kuruta tribe. Chapter 15, Incompatibility of Rules. And the chieftain came to the cave with a basket and put it down. He looked at Rocky, who was still sitting cross-legged and immersed in the understanding of the word God. This child has been here for 10 days. And he hasn't woken up yet? Don't let him get obsessed with it if you keep going like this. Now the chieftain regretted bringing Rocky directly to the cave. If Rocky, who is extremely talented, was completely obsessed with the understanding of the word God and stayed in this cave all the time, it would be a disaster for the Kuruta tribe. With a sigh, the chieftain began to try to wake Rocky up for the 7th time. "Little Rocky, are you okay? You haven't been back for 10 days. Let's stop today. Go back and have a good rest. How about coming back tomorrow? If you hear me talking, just move your fingers and I'll take you back directly." The chieftain didn't dare to move Rocky easily because of the mental energy surging in Rocky's body. If he caused any harm to Rocky, it would be more trouble than gain. Rocky, who heard the words of the clan leader, was also in a dilemma. He had actually mastered the divine characters here 3 days ago. The reason why he had not gone out was because Rocky was thinking about a problem. Originally, Rocky wanted to use the power of the divine characters to develop new abilities, that is, to perfect the abilities of the sword of the Sage King. But when Rocky mastered these divine characters, he found a fatal problem. That is, the divine characters are the rules of nature. It can be described like this: and none is the embodiment of personal will. The ability of personal will under the blessing of none can also be said to be the product of breaking the rules. One is the rules, and the other is breaking the rules. The two are not compatible at all. The reason why this problem was discovered was that Rocky tried to carve the divine characters on the sword of the Sage King, but he could not carve them. The divine characters naturally dissipated when they fell on the materialized objects. Just like a sticker without stickiness, it can't be pasted anyway. This troubled Rocky. How should he solve this problem? Or was it simply impossible? If so, the word God was useless to Rocky. "Hey, it seems that I can't wake up today." The sigh of the clan leader came, and Rocky also put away his mind and turned to look at the clan leader who was about to leave. "Clan leader, I'm fine, don't worry." Hearing Rocky's voice, the clan leader's body suddenly stiffened, and he quickly turned back to look at Rocky, who was talking to him. "Great, little Rocky, you finally woke up. I thought you would stay in this cave for a year or two, and I was more worried that you would never wake up again. This kind of thing is terrible, and the change of thoughts can even directly change the thoughts of a nun. Once obsessed with the word God, one may eventually be swallowed by the word God, or in other words, it may be swallowed by the power of nature. I'm fine. I've been fine for a long time, but after learning the word God, I suddenly found the mistake in my previous thoughts." Mistake? The chief was a little curious. "What mistakes did you find?" "I originally wanted to carve the word God on my weapon." Rocky took out the sword of the wise king, but I found that it was impossible. The power of the word God cannot be left on materialized objects. Rocky seemed a little discouraged. The chief's eyes glanced back and forth between Rocky and the sword of the wise king. After a few seconds of silence, the chief slowly opened his mouth. "Maybe it's not that your idea is wrong." Hearing this, Rocky suddenly raised his head and even stood up directly. "Grandpa Chief, do you have a way?" The chief shook his head. "It's not that I have any way. It's the word God should not be mutually exclusive with none." "Why do you say that?" Rocky didn't understand. He had tried it, and it obviously didn't work, but the clan leader said it didn't repel him. How could it not repel him? Remember what I told you before? Some nuns' abilities have a certain amount of God. Based on this, I speculate that the word God is not mutually exclusive with none. Rocky was also stunned when he heard this. Yes, if the totem or pattern of the word God sometimes appears in the abilities of none, then it should not be mutually exclusive with none. But why? Why can't he succeed now? There must be something wrong. There must be something I didn't expect. Rocky seemed a little crazy at this moment, which made the clan leader's heart sink. Could this state be? Sure enough, the next second, Rocky sat down again and began to emit even more amazing mental energy. Even compared to Rocky 10 days ago, the current mental energy seemed to have increased several times. The practice of the divine word these days, which forgot to eat and sleep, also made Rocky's mind practice intensively. It is normal for the amount of mind energy to increase. It's just that because of Rocky's top talent, the increase in the amount of mind energy is a bit amazing. This level is no longer the level that the patriarch can forcibly stop. If you want to forcibly stop Rocky, you may have to directly launch a fatal attack. The patriarch stood there and felt that he talked too much for the first time. If he didn't say that sentence just now, Rocky could go back with him and have a good rest. No longer like now. He seemed to be possessed at every turn. helplessly left the cave. And Rocky in the cave has been maintaining that state. The brain is frantically thinking about which step he did not do well. However, he tried many times again, and even Rocky carefully carved the divine word every time, but there was still no change. Just when Rocky was about to fall into a dead loop again, Rocky suddenly thought of something. The word God would occasionally appear in the abilities of none, and this word God was not added later. It was there from the beginning. In other words, if I want to add the word God, I wanted the sword of the wise king and strengthen the power of apparition, I need to rematerialize the sword of the wise king. If the sword of the wise king is to be rematerialized, it means that Rocky even has to give up the current sword of the wise king. Giving up the current sword and rematerializing it is basically like abolishing one's martial arts and practicing again. For a moment, Rocky didn't know whether he should do this. After thinking for a moment, Rocky suddenly gritted his teeth. At worst, I can start over again. I can modify my information column freely. No matter how bad the result is, I'm not afraid. Even if there is no ability, relying on top talents, and simply practicing mind energy, you can become a terrible monster. Let's start over. The sword of the wise king floated in front of Rocky. As Rocky gently opened his hand, the sword broke apart. This time it was different from the previous shattering. Instead of dissipating into a crystal state, it shattered directly and dissipated into ki. Along with the dissipation of ki, it also means that this part of ki disappears permanently. After all, Rocky wanted to materialize it permanently before, so abandoning it will naturally reduce Rocky's ki. If it's just a little less ki, it's nothing. At worst, you can practice it back. Chapter 16. New weapons with the power of a decisive kill light. The white light flickered continuously in the cave. The next day, the chieftain who came to the cave entrance to deliver food looked at the constantly flashing light and immediately dropped the basket in his hand and rushed directly into the cave. When he entered the cave, he saw Rocky sitting cross-legged in the middle, with 200 swords flashing white light floating around his body. The first sword he had seen before was the weapon that Rocky materialized for the first time, and he had never seen the second sword before. The other one was even bigger and could even be called a giant sword. It was even taller than Rocky himself, and the white light emitted by the two weapons was actually the two swords seemed to be broken. From time to time, white crystals like glass would burst out. It seemed that the state was a little unstable. This is... Why did Rocky materialize the second sword? What is this for? When the chieftain was puzzled, Rocky's body slowly fell from the air. Rocky opened his eyes and looked at the chieftain. Grandpa Chieftain, I succeeded. Success? What success? Rocky grabbed the sword of the wise king, held the sword in his palm, and handed it to the chief. The sword was still the same as before. Just when the chief didn't understand what Rocky was talking about, he suddenly found a strange pattern on the sword. And this pattern is not the two divine characters in the cave. One is the divine character that strengthens the ability, and the other is the divine character called the rule text. The application range of this divine character is relatively wide. You can do some simple things with the will of the person who engraved the divine character. For example, the iron box that Jean gave to Gon probably used this divine character, and the iron box can only be opened if certain conditions are met. Otherwise, unless the power is strong enough, it cannot be opened by brute force anyway. And Rocky used this divine character. Did you successfully engrave the divine character on the weapon? The chief now understood what Rocky was saying, but he was even more excited. How did you do this? Rocky smiled and said, I discarded my previous weapon. This is a rematerialized weapon. The tribe leader's smile froze when he heard this, and he looked at Rocky in horror. Are you okay? After carefully checking Rocky's body, the tribe leader was relieved to make sure that there was nothing wrong with Rocky. You idiot, don't you know that if you abandon your materialized things, you will face the backlash of thoughts, and the degree of backlash is not something you can control. If it's more serious, you might die directly. Are the consequences so serious? Rocky was stunned for a moment and didn't expect that there would be a risk to his life. If he knew, maybe Rocky wouldn't dare to try it. However, this backlash seems to be a permanent sacrifice of part of his ki. But this backlash doesn't matter to Rocky. It's just like half a day of successful practice is invalidated. It's nothing. But looking at the tribe leader's appearance, it's true that he can't do this kind of dangerous operation casually in the future. Don't worry. I'm fine, Chief. The chief wanted to continue talking, but then he realized that it had already happened, and Rocky was indeed fine. Next time, you must not do such dangerous things. Tell me what you think as soon as possible. Rocky nodded obediently. Okay, tell me. Why did you carve the word God on the sword? Pick up the sword of the wise king. And Rocky pulled the chieftain outside. He just wanted to try out the new ability of the sword of the wise king. When he came outside, the chieftain was confused. What was he going to do? But Rocky said directly, Grandpa Chief, be careful. I'm going to attack you. Hearing Rocky's words, the chieftain frowned. Did he want to try out the new ability on himself? But from what Rocky said before, Rocky's ability should actually be more suitable for surprise attacks. When he knew the other party's ability, it was still difficult for Rocky's ability to achieve the effect. After all, as a person with materialized abilities, the power of the mind is not actually strong. The chieftain smiled and said, Come on, Grandpa also wants to see the actual effect of your ability. But the next second, Rocky's mouth corners slightly raised. The blade in his hand swung violently, and the chieftain frowned when he saw this action. Didn't they say before that the weapon needs to be thrown out, and then apparition can be performed? Rocky was about 10 meters away, so swinging his sword was useless. Snap! Suddenly, there was a faint sound of glass breaking, and Rocky exploded as if he had turned into a glass man. In a flash of white light, the cold blade appeared in front of the chief's neck. The blade stopped immediately. The chief stared at Rocky with his eyes wide open, with the tip of the sword pointing directly at his throat. Although he had used Jin as soon as he noticed something was wrong, but Jin was not hard after all, and when facing a striking attack, he could save his life but could not avoid injury. Moreover, Jin could not stop the sharp blade. If Rocky was the enemy, he would be dead now, even though his mental energy was much greater than Rocky's. This unexpected ability was enough to instantly kill an enemy several times or even dozens of times stronger than himself. This is the real ability of this sword. As long as my attack is launched within a certain distance, I can move directly to any position I want around the enemy at any moment. The target can only be the enemy. Rocky also added in his mind that he must say that sentence to the enemy, I'm going to attack you. Only then can it work. For example, like the bomb demon, it needs to cooperate with language to complete the preconditions before it can be activated. This is the only way for Rocky to develop this ability by using the divine word and constraints without sacrificing anything. You little devil, really a monster. The patriarch looked at Rocky for a long time and smiled. Indeed, Rocky's ability still has flaws. At least before Rocky grew up, the apparition was not that strong. But if you add today's ability, which can directly apparition without throwing, the two abilities are combined. Even more terrifying, when the enemy is used to Rocky's apparition. If Rocky suddenly activates this ability, it will be a sure kill. But at this moment, the chieftain was more curious. Where's the other sword? Another sword. Rocky smiled. Yiksha King's sword. This is Rocky's second weapon, and it is also a skill Rocky developed for Transmuter. The main skill of this sword corresponds to Transmuter, which can release telekinetic bullets and launch tracking attacks on the target. As long as it is hit by the apparition once, it can release telekinetic bullets for tracking attacks. Although it is a sword, its main means of attack is long-range attack. In theory, Rocky should mainly develop melee ability to highlight the advantage of ability, so he chose to develop long-range ability. Because Rocky is afraid of death and saving his life is important, long-range attack interferes with the enemy and then takes the opportunity to escape. If he can use the Yiksha King's sword, then it is no longer an enemy that he can defeat. There is nothing shameful about running away in the face of such an enemy. Chapter 17, The Little Devil Playing with His Fingers. The ability of this sword is mainly used for long-range attacks. Performing specific actions can release telekinetic bullets to attack the enemy. After listening to Rocky's explanation, the clan leader stroked his beard. How should I put it? This ability is not a good ability. The ability of the manipulator, developing the attack method of the transmuter. Even from a system distribution map of none, it can be clearly seen that the ability of the transmuter is the worst in materialization. Under this situation, developing the ability of the transmuter is just asking for trouble. And even if Futamaru wants to increase the power of the transmuter, it may be difficult. Even if the ability of the transmuter is perfectly mastered, the power that can be exerted is only 40%. If the previous ability is to perfectly achieve the effect of unexpected killing, then this ability is basically a useless ability. In terms of the power of the manipulator ability user, the attack of the transmuter is probably not only weak in power, but also not fast at all. It would be better if Rocky could perform 2 more apparitions. And releasing such an attack consumes a lot of mind, which is not worth the loss. Well, this ability is not bad. Although Rocky's ability is indeed a failure from the perspective of the ability user. But if you think about it from the perspective of making up for Rocky's long-range combat ability, it is still good. Even if it is a bluff, the enemy may be a little afraid at the first time. In the battle of mind users, you never know whether the enemy's attack will have any unexpected abilities. So it is better not to be hit by the enemy's attack as much as possible. Otherwise, it is very likely to be hit by the enemy's ability. Looking at the helplessness in the face of the patriarch when he spoke, Rocky also guessed that the other party also saw that it was indeed a bit useless for him, a manipulator ability user, to develop the transmuter ability. But the ability, just use in the right place. It is easy for Rocky to hit the enemy by apparition, and the enemy will not be willing to be hit easily at the first time when releasing an attack with a tracking effect. It is enough to delay the time. But what I didn't expect is that you little brat are really amazing. The clan leader suddenly smiled and looked at Rocky. You have already started to use other systems to develop your manipulator ability, which is great. Ha ha ha. Without anyone's guidance, Rocky may just rely on instinct to develop this step of ability, but in the eyes of the clan leader, this is talent. Okay, the next step is to start training for different mind systems. As a manipulator, it is best to first train the conjurer ability. Among the mind systems, the conjurer ability is the system where the manipulator ability can exert the greatest power. It can exert 80% of the power. So it is indeed necessary to practice it as the first step, and Rocky also has some ideas for the third weapon to be developed. However, it is not developed immediately, but it is necessary to practice the abilities of the 4 systems of conjurer: enhancer, transmuter, and emitter. Push it to its limit, and then increase the amount of mind energy. The development of abilities is enough at this stage. As a nun, the amount of nun is the most important. Nun is just a means to improve combat power or to convert the amount of nun into stronger combat power. Now that the means are available, we cannot put the cart before the horse. The most important thing is to polish the nun itself. Okay, Grandpa, the clan leader. The next step is to start practicing on each system. Okay, but go home first today. Grandpa has prepared a lot of delicious food for you. Eat something first. You haven't eaten well these days. Your body is still in the development stage, so you must supplement your nutrition. Yes, I'm only 8 years old now. I should eat more to develop better. This will also help to strengthen my physique and mind. For 10 consecutive days of practice, Rocky didn't get a good sleep. Basically, I used the time of practice to rest. Strictly speaking, it can't be considered as sleeping. After eating, even if it was only at noon, Rocky, who lacked rest, fell asleep. He slept until the next morning. After getting up and having a hearty breakfast, he started the first systematic practice. Conjurer practice. There's also a way of practicing conjurer in the original book, but the way of practicing is not exactly the same. In the original book, while running in the forest, avoiding obstacles, you also need to change the mind into a specific shape on your hand. But here the patriarch asked Rocky to make at least 4 fingers and the mind on the fingers change into different shapes at the same time. First, place 4 numbers at the same time, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then practice random changes of numbers. The patriarch gave a 4-digit number, and Rocky needed to change it with his mind within 3 seconds. He began to practice conjurer, and Rocky's terrifying talent once again shocked the patriarch. In one morning, the progress was visible to the naked eye. After only a few hours of practice, Rocky was able to easily change the corresponding 4-digit number. But Rocky was not satisfied with this, and he used all 10 fingers. However, this greatly increased the difficulty. At the beginning, the patriarch accompanied Rocky in practice, but as Rocky's visible progress, the patriarch seemed to be worried that his confidence would be hit if he continued. Let Rocky practice alone, and he would not accompany him. On the way back, the patriarch shook his head. Basic conjurer training was completed in one morning. This abnormal talent is terrible. At this time, there was a rustling sound in the bushes, and the patriarch frowned and glanced. It's those two little ghosts. He shook his head and left without asking any more questions. When the chief left, 2 heads popped out of the bushes. The chief is gone. He just came over there. Let's go see what's over there. Another person nodded, and 2 figures jumped out of the bushes and ran directly in the direction where the chief came from. And soon when they arrived at an open space, they found Rocky sitting under a tree, counting his fingers. It's that little ghost. Yeah, about 10 days ago, the chief mobilized many people to look for that little ghost. He is the one who got lost. What's his name? Rocky. It seems to be this name. It seems that his parents died a long time ago, and he only has an uncle. Now it seems that the chief grandfather is responsible for taking care of him. One of the blonde little ghosts felt a little sympathetic to the other's experience after hearing this. He lost his parents at such a young age, and now he is playing with his fingers alone here. It seems that he doesn't even have a playmate. Why don't we ask him to play with us? It seems pitiful for him to be here alone. Another kid smiled and said, "Okay." Chapter 18, November. Dangerous time. The two's little actions naturally did not hide from Rocky, who had already mastered the spell. But Rocky was a little curious about who was secretly rushing towards this side. However, the people nearby should all be members of the Kuruta tribe, so Rocky was not worried about encountering any danger. From that day, the atmosphere within the Kuruta tribe was quite good, and every member of the tribe was very concerned about the safety of other members of the tribe. Otherwise, if I were lost alone, although the tribe leader could lead the entire Kuruta tribe to search together, it should not be that everyone had good intentions towards me. But Rocky felt that day. Although some tribe members preached, in fact, there was no malice in their eyes. They were just worried that the children in the tribe would mess around. That's right, it was not a large tribe. If the tribe members were not united, then there would probably be no need for Phantom Troop to destroy the Kuruta tribe, and I would have perished first. After a while, 2 little ghosts came out of the bushes, one after the other, approaching Rocky. Rocky was still a little confused. Could it be that he was wrong? There were still many problems within the Kuruta tribe. The 2 guys were very careful. Are they trying to hurt me? No way. I didn't do anything to provoke the Kuruta people. Why would anyone want to attack me? While Rocky was wondering, he had already put away his thoughts and started preparing to fight back. From the feeling, the 2 were just ordinary people. They didn't master the thoughts at all. It was simply a death wish to hurt me. Wow! Suddenly, when Rocky was thinking about how the other party would attack, one of the little ghosts suddenly jumped forward and shouted in Rocky's ear. This childish trick made Rocky stunned for a moment. He turned his head and looked at the other party calmly. The other party was a little disappointed when he saw that Rocky didn't react. Didn't it scare you? So they were so cautious just to scare me? Rocky couldn't help rolling his eyes and didn't know what to say. But soon another voice came. Pyro, he's still young. Fortunately, he didn't scare him. If he really scared him, it might not be easy to comfort him at that time. Who would be scared to tears? Do you think you were a child? I seem to be an 8-year-old kid. Suddenly Rocky was stunned. The other guy had blonde hair, and his face looked much more childish. But the general outline was not wrong. This kid was Kurapika. Your name is Rocky, right? Kurapi came to Rocky and squatted down, showing an extremely friendly smile. The kid who got lost that day, his name is Piro, my good friend, and my name is Kurapika. Rocky was a little confused now. What did these two kids want to do with him? Piro, who was standing next to him, also squatted down in front of Rocky, and then smiled and said, "Isn't it boring to play with your fingers here alone? Why don't you go to the back mountain with us to explore?" Rocky was stunned for a moment, looked at the other party, and then looked at his own hands. Do these two guys think he is playing with his fingers here? Who would be so bored to play with fingers? It seems that playing with fingers is not boring for children, and it is even fun. Why did you come to call me? This is what Rocky is curious about. Playing with fingers can be ignored, but what is the purpose of these two people coming here? See you playing with your fingers here alone, without any friends. If you are willing, we too can be your friends, Kurapika said. When Rocky heard this, he was stunned. If he looked at it from an adult's perspective, it seemed very naive, but considering the other party's age, it can only mean that the other person is kind-hearted and compassionate. Rocky also roughly understood that the two seemed to sympathize with him for not having a playmate when they saw him alone here. So they came to talk to him. He shook his head and said, "No. The clan leader asked me to complete my practice here. I will not leave until the practice is finished." Practice? The two looked at each other. What kind of practice is playing with fingers? I don't understand. Pyro wanted to say something, but Kurapika on the side grabbed Pyro first. Okay. Then we won't bother you. But if you want to find a fun place in the future, come to the lake under a yellow leaf tree in the west to find us. Where we live, Pyro and I are your friends from today. We will come and play with you when we are free. After saying that, he grabbed Pyro and was about to leave, but Pyro looked helpless. As the two figures gradually faded away, Rocky came back to his senses. Childhood friendship is really simple. It seems that it is okay to take a break occasionally, and it seems good to spend a day to gain not one, but two sincere friendships. Wait for me. I'll go with you. Hearing Rocky's voice, Kurapika and Piro also stopped and waited for Rocky. They did not have any opinions about Rocky's rejection and then agreement. On the contrary, both of them laughed. What adventure? It's just a child's game, and Rocky probably wouldn't find it interesting in the past. But today, with his friends by his side, Rocky felt that time passed particularly quickly. It was dark in a blink of an eye. The three of them went home in a dirty state. When the tribe leader saw Rocky's dirty state, he didn't say anything but smiled happier than before. He urged Rocky to go to bed after washing up. At night, Rocky, lying on the bed, resumed the training that he had not completed during the day. At this time, Rocky suddenly remembered something. When he was with Kurapika and Piro today, the two had been discussing the topic of hunter. This is probably why Kurapika wants to become a hunter. While thinking about this, Rocky suddenly stood up and glanced at the calendar on the wall. November. No, right? Rocky suddenly remembered something. Kurapika participated in the hunter trial when he was 17 years old. At that time, he said that the Kuruta tribe was exterminated 4 years ago, and the hunter exam was on January 7th. In other words, when he was 13 years old, but Kurapika's birthday was April 4th. So, taking into account the birthday factor, the Kuruta tribe was actually exterminated when Kurapika was 12 years old. And it was either at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. It is already November now. The extermination of the tribe may have happened in December or January. Otherwise, Kurapika would not have said it happened 4 years ago. Rocky even feels that the extermination of the tribe may have happened in January. If it happened in January, then Rocky has less than 2 months. In less than 2 months, Rocky does not know how much he can improve, but now Rocky has a new idea. After living together for so long, the clan leader grandfather treated him well, and Kurapika and Piro became friends with him. Should he run away alone and ignore them? And his uncle, although he took care of his predecessor for a long time, he also took care of him for a few days. He also treated him sincerely. If he really ran away alone under such circumstances, it would be too heartless and ungrateful. Chapter 19. Prophecy from Rocky. If I had never had any contact with the people here and had never received any care from them, Rocky would not feel sorry for anyone if he ran away alone. But now it is different. During the time he lived in the Kuruta tribe, although the Kuruta people did not treat Rocky very well, they treated Rocky sincerely. Especially the chief grandfather, he was really good to him. Save them. Even with the golden finger, Rocky did not dare to say that he would be safe. That was Phantom Troop. It was not the level in the original book, but it was probably a good player. Rocky wanted to fight Phantom Troop after only practicing for a few months, which is a bit too arrogant. I am afraid that my ability is not enough to become a savior. He smiled bitterly. He was more than enough to protect himself, but it was probably impossible to save the entire Kuruta tribe. But he could not just watch these people being exterminated. What to do? Rocky thought about it and said, "It seems that there is only one way. If he could not save everyone and could not escape alone, he could only do what he could. Do your best. And the first step is..." The next morning, the chief prepared a sumptuous meal as usual. He really felt like a grandfather during this period of time. And his grandson is a gifted person. The future of the Kuruta tribe seems to be more and more worth looking forward to. The mood is naturally good. But when eating, the chief found that Rocky's face was not right. "What's wrong? Little Rocky, are you sick?" As a nun, the probability of getting sick is very low. Even if you're really sick, it is probably a serious illness. That's not easy to deal with. And Rocky shook his head. "No, I'm fine. I just had a dream." Hearing this, the chief breathed a sigh of relief. "Dream? What dream made you like this? Did you have a nightmare?" Nodded gently. "It's okay. It's just a dream. It's not real. There's no need to be afraid. Although you are not yet an adult, you should still show your manliness. How can you be scared by a nightmare?" "No, Grandpa Chief, I dreamed. Our Kuruta tribe was exterminated." After the voice fell, the chief, who was about to eat, also stopped. "Exterminate the tribe." This made his eyes become much sharper in an instant, but in the blink of an eye, his eyes became much gentler when he looked at Rocky. "It's just a nightmare. It's okay." "No, Grandpa Chief, I feel that this dream is so real, even as if I experienced it myself. I don't think this is an ordinary dream," Rocky said very seriously. "For none, dreams may be false, but they may also be true. People who practice none often feel more acute than ordinary people, and even their five senses or perception of danger are more incredible. Some none can even feel uneasy before they encounter danger." The chief stared at Rocky and looked at Rocky carefully. Rocky's eyes didn't flicker at all. He wasn't kidding. "Then tell me what your dream was like." "I dreamed of spiders." "Spiders? The Kuruta tribe was wiped out by spiders? There are no creatures that's scary in this world. Not to mention it's just a spider." It seems that the child saw an animal like a spider and felt scared. So he had this dream at night. "Ha ha! Did a spider scare my talented little Rocky?" "No." Rocky shook his head. "I'm not talking about an animal spider, but a group of people who have spider tattoos on their bodies, and there are numbers on the spider tattoos. One of the men with the number 11 tattooed on him looks very majestic and has a strong burst of will. He easily broke our house with just one punch. Then many people in the village attacked him, but there was no effect at all. Spider tattoo." The tribe leader looked at Rocky in surprise. Rocky's description reminded him of an organization, Phantom Troop. Although he is the tribe leader of the Kuruta tribe, he is also very familiar with the outside world. The little ghosts living in the Kuruta tribe should absolutely not have heard of Phantom Troop. Rocky also couldn't know, but now Rocky can dream about Phantom Troop, although he doesn't know who the person with number 11 is. If he just dreamed about spider tattoos, it wouldn't be too coincidental, but spider tattoos with numbers on them, this is too coincidental. He also knew that the Phantom Troop group had spider tattoos on their bodies, and every member of the brigade had a number on their body. This kind of information is not too secret, and it is easy for a nun to obtain this kind of information. But that's all. If you want to know more about Phantom Troop, you can't get it casually. And Rocky, a kid who has been in the Kuruta tribe since he was a child and has never left, it is absolutely impossible for him to know these. And it is even more impossible for him to just happen to dream about Phantom Troop. Coincidence? Or is it that Rocky's perception of danger made his mind tell him, in the form of a dream, that danger is coming? There was no dream at all. It was just an excuse Rocky made up himself. He had to say that the child's identity and the prophecy of the dream were used to tell the chieftain about the danger of the Kuruta tribe. Although it may not be effective, it would be good if it could play a preventive role, and perhaps it could keep more Kuruta people alive. Now Rocky can only do so much. It would be more believable to say that he knew the Kuruta tribe was exterminated than to say that such a prediction would be more believable. Prophecies given by a genius are always easier to believe than those who claim to know the future. After saying this, Rocky started to eat, and his clothes looked very heavy. The chieftain who saw Rocky like this now wondered if Rocky really had a premonition of something. This kind of thing should indeed be prevented. However, according to the time, the next relocation of the Kuruta tribe will only take 3 months, so there shouldn't be any big problems. Instead, the tribe members can be summoned to take precautions recently, and the barrier near the tribe should also be reinforced. All these years have been repaired, and no reinforcement has been carried out. Looking at the chief who was lost in thought, Rocky sighed that there was only so much he could do now, if there was still no change. Then the next opportunity would be when Kurapika left the village, and then he would find a way to get more Kurutas to leave. After that, the remaining Kurutas could only try their best to save them. Perhaps during this period, he could find a way to get the chief to agree to relocate the Kurutas, and then he might be able to avoid the disaster of extermination. And the plan to save the Kurutas should not be too hasty. If he was strong enough, then his words would carry more weight. Strengthening his own strength was the first priority. Time was running out. Hurry up and practice. If it was the most ideal state, he could make another modification before the arrival of Phantom Troop. Then there might be other ways to save the Kurutas. Chapter 20 Development of Red Eyes. Rocky won't go to look for Kurapika and Pyro today. Time is tight, so there's not much time for fun. Now I have to hurry up and practice. I came to the old place where Rocky stayed yesterday, an open area in the forest. In the practice of the mind system, in addition to the manipulator, there are 4 other systems that need to be practiced specifically: enhancer, conjurer, transmuter, and emitter. At the same time, the amount of mind energy must be increased. There are also various application skills of mind, such as Zhou, Yuan, Yin, Jin, Jin, Tang, and Lu. These all need to be mastered proficiently. Just thinking about it makes me feel overwhelmed. No, there are too many things to practice. I don't know where to start. Now Rocky feels that each one is very important. The targeted practice of each system is important, but the application skills of mind are equally important. The same is true for the amount of mind energy. If you want to consider escaping, the first thing to practice should be Yin. But now Rocky is not just thinking about escaping. He also has to save the Kuruta tribe as much as possible. Suddenly, Rocky thought of something. And the fiery red eye. The power of the fiery red eye is the shortcut that can quickly improve Rocky's combat power in a short period of time. Now, the blood power of the fiery red eye has decreased. I don't know how long I can maintain the state of the fiery red eye. Let's try it first. Open the fiery red eye, and this time Rocky feels that it has become a little difficult to open the fiery red eye. This is the change after the blood power decreases. It requires more intense emotional stimulation. With this discovery, Rocky was a little surprised. If the level of blood power determines the difficulty of opening the fiery red eye, then if it is the top blood power, does it mean that the fiery red eye can be opened with just one thought? And the intermediate blood power can bring more improvement and less burden on the body? Can it be understood that the higher the blood talent, the stronger the power can be, and there is no burden on the body? If that is the case, then the modification of blood power is necessary. When I turn on the red eyes, I will become an enhancer. Maybe I can develop some powerful abilities based on this state. The enhancer ability made Rocky think of Gone First, the terrifying ability that directly increases his combat power. It would be nice if he could develop a similar ability to use it specifically when the red eyes are turned on. It's like turning on the berserk mode. While Rocky was thinking, the red eyes state ended. After testing, the red eyes can last for 10 minutes. Although 10 minutes is not too long, it is a terrifying improvement compared to before. When Rocky mastered the method of turning on the red eyes, he could only turn on for 3 seconds. But now he can extend the time to 10 minutes. I didn't expect that he could improve so much without realizing it. Could it be that because of the practice of mind, The physical fitness has been enhanced, so the red eye's maintenance time has increased unconsciously. Probably the only way to understand it. But 10 minutes is enough to deal with special situations. After feeling my own situation, I feel very tired now, at least a little more tired than the state after the normal training. This means that if you use the fire red eyes, if you can't kill the opponent during the use, then once you leave the fire red eyes state, you are basically no different from dead. It's also necessary to consider the intensity of the battle and the consumption of physical strength. It's probably difficult to maintain it for 10 minutes in actual combat, but at least 1 or 2 minutes of burst time can still be done. The problem is to develop the ability. What kind of ability should be developed for the red eyes? Since it becomes an enhancer when it is turned on, it is natural to develop the ability of the enhancer. If it is an ability similar to Gone, then maybe I have a good idea. It is obviously unnecessary to develop one's own ability like Gone. I can't reach the emotions and thoughts when Gone developed his ability. It is impossible to develop the same ability as Gone in that emotional state. And the price paid for Gone's ability is too high. Rocky doesn't want to pay the same price. And Rocky's idea is the same as the ability he has already
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.